This person hasn't regained consciousness even once since being brought to the hospital.
Yes, that's right. It seems her body became weaker after a fracture before.
Then it's about time, isn't it? I'll prepare the funeral wreath.
As I was speechless at my assail Nancy's words, Nancy, without showing any concern for me, looked down at Mom lying in the bed and said,
"So, I can finally say goodbye,"
and laughed mockingly before walking away. I was dumbfounded, unable to understand and too stunned to even feel angry. I sat down, placed my hand on my forehead, and sighed. This was too harsh to be a joke. Not funny at all. Is it even right to say such things about one's own parent? I don't have children, so I don't know, but I think I would be sad if my daughter spoke to me that way. As I thought this, my MIL Barbara, who had been unconscious, slowly began to rise.
"Oh my! Barbara!"
I woke up because I heard Nancy's voice. "That's right, there was something I wanted to tell before I die." Barbara spoke to me with a clarity unexpected from someone who had been unconscious. And I will never forget the smile on her face. Just 3 days later, Barbara passed away in the hospital where she was admitted. It was around the time when the buds on the cherry tree visible from the hospital room window were just beginning to bloom. My name is Linda. I am 58 years old this year, and my husband David, who is the same age, and I have lived a peaceful life without any major fights or troubles since our marriage. The only regret in our lives was not having children, but after we both turned 50, we stopped worrying about it from the bottom of our hearts and started looking forward to how we would spend our retirement together. David had been running a chain of eateries for a long time, but was transferred to the headquarters for his skills, and now he is in charge of several stores, leading a busy life. As a housewife, I tried my best to support my busy husband by always being frugal and ensuring he could truly rest when he came home by keeping the room clean and always arranging flowers by the living room window every weekend. I don't know if David is interested in flowers, but arranging seasonal flowers in a vase became my only hobby, hoping it would bring him some comfort. "That's an unusual flower, isn't it? Lily of the valley?" David pointed at the flower on the table and said to me. Without touching his breakfast bread and with a cup of black coffee in one hand and the newspaper in the other, he shifted his gaze to the flower. "It's a snowdrop. In a small vase made for single flowers, a delicate white flower blooms downward at the tip of its slender stem, presenting a cool demeanor. The white flower, mistaken by David for a lily of the valley, is a cute flower that tells us of the arrival of spring in our garden. They bloomed in the garden's flower bed again this year. I decorated with a few because they're so cute. They might wither quickly since they don't take up water well."
"I see. They're beautiful."
David folded the newspaper on the table and quietly murmured as he looked at the flower again. "How has Barbara been lately?"
"What do you mean?"
"Are you in touch? Aren't you going to visit during the holidays this year?" Even though we didn't have children, we still visited each other's parents a few times a year. However, recently, David has been busy with the opening preparations of new eateries he's in charge of, making it difficult to take a long break. David folded the newspaper, looked up at the clock on the wall, and stood up. That was my cue to hand him his lunch. "Take care. Will you be home early today?"
"Not sure." "Oh, no. I'll be home early today,"
David said while looking at the calendar on the wall. Today was their wedding anniversary. After David left the house, I started preparing to make the special meal I had planned for today. The sunlight streaming through the curtains grew stronger, signaling it was noon. I was heating up last night's dinner in the microwave when the phone rang. The landline, which rarely rings. It was mostly unused, but calls from relatives or Barbara usually came through it. So, when the landline rang, it often meant something had happened with the family, and I picked up the receiver a bit nervously.
Hello?
It was Barbara on the line.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Barbara greeted me in her usual tone. Sorry for calling out of the blue. David's not there, I assume, since it's a weekday. There's something I wanted to ask him. I see. I'll pass the message when he gets back. That would be great, thank you. Actually, Barbara explained that she had fractured her right leg recently when she missed a step on her staircase at home. She had called an ambulance herself and received treatment, but now she was finding it difficult to do shopping due to her condition.
Having a fractured leg is really troublesome. I've been able to take care of myself until now, but even small tasks have become difficult at this age.
I see. If it's okay with you, I can help out. I'm a housewife and have some free time.
What are you talking about? I know because I was a housewife too. It's tough being a housewife. Husbands expect more than just ordinary housework as if it's a given. Isn't David being demanding?
I chuckled over the phone. David is very kind and wouldn't get upset over me cutting corners with the housework. I thought Barbara, being his mom, must understand this even better than I do, maybe even more than I realize. That night, David came home unusually early. We enjoyed a delicious dinner together, sipped on slightly expensive beer, and reminisced about funny stories from when we first met. The cake David brought home was a cheesecake from my favorite shop. The shop was in the opposite direction of his workplace, and I couldn't help but smile at the thought that he went out of his way to choose my favorite shop instead of one nearby. After dinner, while doing the dishes, I told David about the call from Barbara. David came to my side while I was washing the dishes. What did you say? I wiped the washed dishes with a towel and put them back on the shelf. Barbara fractured her leg at home. She asked if you could take her to the hospital and for shopping, maybe once every 2 weeks, by car.
Once every 2 weeks? She's really holding back. Actually, someone needs to take care of Mom. Life would be uncertain otherwise.
I know it might be presumptuous, but when I offered to help, she refused. She told me to take good care of you instead. David laughed heartily and then immediately turned serious. With Fael gone, there had always been concerns about Barbara's living situation. David, somewhat reluctantly, took out his mobile phone and, while scratching his head, "Guess I should give her a call," muttered. "Ah, it's me, David." "Sis?" "Ah, right. David walked out of the living room with his mobile phone to his ear. The call was to Nancy. Nancy is a year older than David and works in PR for a company in the city center. Honestly, I don't know much about Nancy, who hardly ever shows up at family gatherings, but I was vaguely aware that Barbara spoke ill of her, so I knew their relationship wasn't good. David returned with a grim expression and sat down. "She said she doesn't care about Mom." "That's terrible." "Well, it's not like we can do much either. Can't be helped. I know someone who arranges home helpers. I'll talk to them sometime." David acted swiftly, and by the following week, a home helper started visiting Barbara's house. Initially, Barbara complained, but she eventually accepted the fact that she couldn't manage everything on her own and expressed her gratitude for David's kindness. Years passed by in the blink of an eye. As usual, I opened the curtains to let in the morning sunlight. The snowdrops that used to bloom in our garden around this time every year were absent. While the green stems of these bulbous plants were growing, they hadn't blossomed into their characteristic white flowers. It happens, I thought, slightly disappointed, as I yawned. The landline rang. Caught off guard by the phone ringing mid-yawn, I ended up coughing. As I picked up the receiver, My heart rate sped up when the caller identified themselves as the reception at the university hospital.
I'll be right there.
Without asking for details, I quickly got ready and jumped into the car. I had heard that Barbara's health had been deteriorating. Frantically, I grabbed my mobile phone to inform David that I was heading to Barbara's hospital. Noticing my fingers trembling on the steering wheel, I tried to calm my nerves by taking deep breaths at a red light. It's going to be okay. It has to be. For some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about the snowdrops I had seen in the flower bed earlier. Despite their lush green stems, the absence of even a single bud made them look more like weeds, unsettling me in my current state. Upon arriving at the hospital, I found David waiting. He was in his suit, apparently having been inspecting a nearby store when I called, and had rushed over.
We were just told it might be tough considering her age.
David looked exhausted as he shared this with me. Leaving David outside, I lightly knocked and entered Barbara's hospital room. There, Barbara lay unconscious. Her thin arm, now much leaner, peeked out from under a white blanket, and I instinctively looked away. Despite our shock, we discussed with the doctor what steps to take next, concluding that as her family, we should care for her daily. David's job didn't allow him much time, so the majority of the caregiving fell to me, but I accepted this responsibility and continued to care for Barbara diligently. I would gently change her position and wipe her back, even though she remained unconscious. Every hour, I massaged her back and diligently rubbed her swollen legs, trying to improve her circulation. One day, I had to leave the hospital to pick up some necessities for Barbara's stay from a nearby drugstore. When I returned to the room with shopping bags in hand, I found Nancy there unexpectedly.
Nancy, you came to see Barbara.
I was genuinely happy that Nancy had come to visit Barbara. Despite everything, the fact that Nancy came to see her, even if it was a bit late, made me happy, thinking she must have been worried after hearing that Barbara had lost consciousness. Nancy glanced at me and then smirked unpleasantly, curling one side of her mouth.
This person hasn't regained consciousness even once since being brought to the hospital, it seems.
Yes, that's right.
It seems her body has weakened since the fracture before. Then it's about time, isn't it? I'll prepare the funeral wreath.
I was speechless at Nancy's words. Without showing any concern for me, Nancy looked down at Mom lying in the bed and said,
"So, I can finally say goodbye,"
and laughed mockingly before walking away. I was dumbfounded, unable to comprehend and too stunned to even feel angry. I sat down, placed my hand on my forehead, and sighed. This was too harsh to be a joke. Not funny at all. Is it even right to say such things about one's own parent? I don't have children, so I don't know, but I think I would be sad if my daughter spoke to me that way. As I was thinking, Barbara, who had been unconscious, slowly began to rise.
"Oh my! Barbara!"
I woke up because I heard Nancy's voice. That's right, there was something I wanted to tell before I die. Barbara spoke to me with a clarity unexpected from someone who had been unconscious. And I will never forget the smile on her face. Just 3 days later, Barbara passed away in the hospital where she was admitted. It was around the time when the buds on the cherry tree visible from the hospital room window were just beginning to bloom.
"The cherry blossoms will be here soon,"
I said to Barbara, and she smiled weakly. "Take me outside, in a wheelchair or anything," she had said. I never thought she would pass away so soon. After Barbara passed away, David immediately notified the relatives as per the doctor's information. While the attending physician was filling out the death certificate for Barbara's body to be transported home, Nancy appeared out of nowhere. My expression darkened instantly, and I nudged David's shoulder.
"See? Just like I predicted, right? I told you it was about time. Nancy. Enough is enough. Oh dear. Because you were looking after Mom for the inheritance, you find it troublesome that someone like me shows up, don't you?
I felt a rush of blood to my head, but David immediately shouted.
Get out!
He yelled. Nancy, seemingly taken aback by this, widened her eyes in surprise, but then smirked again and said,
Let's talk after the funeral is over. About what's to come.
She then left. I clenched my fists, feeling a tightness in my chest from frustration. The funeral proceeded without any hitches, but it was a challenging time for David and me. We were utterly exhausted. Most of the funeral arrangements were made by us. We contacted the funeral home, discussed the schedule and details, and held the service. Barbara had told David she preferred a small funeral, so we only invited close relatives. Nancy called us to the smoking area of the funeral home and handed us canned coffee. She took out a cigarette from her bag, lit it, and inhaled deeply with relish.
We should sell the family home and split Mom's savings and other assets in half, right?
Nancy asked, pointing the lit end of her cigarette towards David's face. Since neither David nor I smoked, we stood a bit away from the smoking area, resulting in our voices being raised to converse with Nancy.
We're not thinking about selling the house right now. Don't you think it's disrespectful to even discuss this so soon after the funeral? I wonder how it works in such cases. Should we assess the family home's value and then David pays me half of that?
Suppressing the urge to throw the can of coffee in Nancy's face, I stepped forward, ahead of David. Nancy looked at me somewhat surprised, stubbed out her cigarette in the ashtray, and lit another one.
Actually, Barbara mentioned there was a will. A will? I haven't heard about it. On that day you showed such disrespect to Barbara, who was unconscious. Barbara told me she had prepared a will while she was still in good health. And she told me what's in it.
Barbara, on that day, had left a note written hastily on stationery about the general contents of her will and a memo stating that no one was allowed to contest it. She had already entrusted the actual will to a notary, so she couldn't show it, but she weakly smiled, saying she remembered the contents well that she had noted down. When Barbara handed me the envelope containing the hastily written note, her expression was serene, as if she had resolved any lingering regrets. Nancy, with a cigarette between her lips, read the contents labeled will. Her expression gradually hardened, and when her gaze shifted from the will to me, she stubbed out her cigarette and approached. As Nancy got closer, the smell of cigarette prompted me to grimace involuntarily.
What do you mean by this? You're saying all of Mom's inheritance goes to you guys? Don't joke with me.
I glared at Nancy with a firm stance. When Barbara handed me this will, she had held my hand, thanked me, and with a face of sorrow I had never seen before, she pleaded. Please. I couldn't erase Barbara's beseeching face from my mind.
There's one will, but there's another document Barbara left behind. She asked me to make sure it's enforced, even if it means going to court. Don't beat around the bush. Just hand it over. What is this document? It's a promissory note.
At that, Nancy slightly raised her eyebrows and placed her hand on her chin.
What does that mean?
She seemed to be pondering, but it was clear Nancy didn't understand the significance of the term promissory note in this context. That was understandable. To be honest, I was also surprised when I first saw this promissory note. Whether Barbara was meticulous by nature or just precise about financial matters, she had recorded in great detail the money she had lent to her daughter, Nancy. The record of debts, listed with dates, times, amounts lent, and reasons, filled about half of the notebook. Most entries hinted at Nancy's financial contributions to boyfriends she had dated when she was younger. After I briefly explained the contents of the promissory note, Nancy confronted me, her face pale.
She recorded everything in such detail. Always criticizing the people I dated, always something. Linda, how much does it all come to? There's at least $80,000. However, there's no mention of the interest rate, so the statutory rate would apply.
The actual amount on the promissory note was about $25,000, but I lied effortlessly. The repayment deadline had long passed, and Nancy, having some legal knowledge, would understand that this story didn't add up. Yet, I pressed on. I couldn't let Nancy take away the savings Barbara had accumulated or the family home she cherished.
The original is with a lawyer, but Barbara had one suggestion before we proceed with a claim against Nancy.
Nancy was clearly flustered by this unexpected turn of events. While contemplating whether to light another cigarette and idly twirling it between her fingers, I conveyed to Nancy what Barbara had told me. If she didn't contest the inheritance, we would let the matter of the debt slide.
Most of Barbara's savings were used for the funeral, and selling the family home will take time. If you contest the inheritance, the debt repayment will commence immediately, which would surely complicate your life.
I tried to speak as gently as possible, not wanting to provoke Nancy. David, standing beside me, looked tense, glancing back and forth between Nancy and me. Soon, a staff member from the crematorium came too. "We're ready. Inform us." Watching Barbara's body being placed in the cremation chamber was a moment of profound sorrow, even for me. It must have been even more difficult for David. Yet, strangely, seeing her reduced to ashes brought a sense of peace. As we waited for the bus to take us home from the crematorium, David looked relieved, taking deep breaths of the fresh outdoor air. I stood silently by his side until Nancy approached us awkwardly and said,
"I'll go by the will. But please spare me the loan part. What about selling the family home? You can handle it however you like. But I can't pay back the loan."
After saying that, she didn't wait for our response and returned to the smoking area. David remained silent. Watching Nancy's retreating figure, he seemed to want to say something witty but eventually just looked down, resigned. Later, it was revealed that Nancy had quit her job, hoping to inherit from Barbara. She had moved to a downtown apartment and indulged in nightclub visits and luxury shopping, leading to financial distress. It was baffling how she could make such decisions. Believing there was a significant inheritance, Barbara had indeed lent Nancy a considerable amount of money, perhaps fostering Nancy's belief in available funds. Forced to move to a standard apartment and start a part-time job, Nancy's arrogant attitude led to her quick dismissal, and she eventually had to leave that apartment too. At the family court, when Barbara's will was unsealed in the presence of witnesses, it confirmed that all her assets were left to David and me, as Barbara had stated. Though it was expected, Nancy remained silent, sighing deeply and looking defeated. Nancy is now scraping by with a live-in part-time job, but we have no sympathy for her. David, her brother, shares my reluctance to interact further, and one day, the landline was removed from our home. We've decided to keep in touch only with close relatives. Yet, there's a part of me that wonders if this lonely conclusion was truly for the best. I wonder if this was truly the right ending for Barbara. Time passed, and as the first anniversary of Barbara's passing approached, having received the inheritance, we built a respectable grave and continued to live our lives as usual, mindful not to waste money unnecessarily. On a warm day heralding the arrival of spring, I noticed the white snowdrops that hadn't bloomed last year now adorning the flower bed visible through the open window. These flowers hung towards the ground, swaying like earrings. I couldn't help but step outside and bend down to admire the flowers in the flower bed. Among them were low-lying pansies and violas, adding a vibrant splash of color. I gently touched the snowdrops with my fingertips. David returned from a neighborhood stroll on his bicycle, his basket filled with various vegetables.
What's with all these vegetables?
Got them from the local farmer's market. They were cheap, so I bought a bunch.
Even if they were cheap, this is a lot.
Seeing the basket brimming with vegetables, I exclaimed.
Ah.
And with a slightly mischievous expression, I suggested to David,
let's use these vegetables to make a variety of dishes that celebrate spring. All of them? You think we can eat that much?
Why not invite Nancy over? David widened his eyes, his smile tinged with disbelief, as if he'd misheard me. Nancy would likely have plenty of complaints about my vegetable dishes. But even if she's not fond of them, making fried vegetables might soften their bitterness, making them palatable. Still, Nancy might refuse to eat or even decline the invitation to our home altogether. Yet, if she did come over, I'd insist on showing her the snowdrops blooming in the garden. I'd bring her to the flower bed, have her sit where I am, and even suggest visiting Barbara's grave together, though she'd surely refuse. But if she found the flowers beautiful, I believe we might come to understand each other, even if just a little.
I've fallen for someone else. I want to get a divorce.
Our marriage was in ruins, and my husband, Vincent, handed me divorce papers. He often berated me for my whole attitude of our life. Without resisting, I accepted the divorce papers. I know the real reason he wanted the divorce. Fine. Here, the divorce papers. I signed and pushed the papers back at Vincent, who looked puzzled by my lack of resistance.
I wasn't going to refuse the divorce. He was going to see what hell on earth looks like. After the divorce, I immediately went to a specific place.
My name is Charlotte Henderson, wife of Vincent, a real estate company president. Vincent and I have been together for 10 years, and now he's confronting me with divorce papers. It all started about 6 months ago.
Can't you settle down with your work?
Vincent, who runs a real estate company, was rarely at home. It wasn't like this when we first married, but now his business thrived, his social commitments are increased. He was always out, using entertainment as an excuse. No family time on weekends, he was always going out alone. I spent my days at home, lonely. We didn't have children. And every time he left me at home, I blamed myself if it was because I couldn't have children. For Vincent, who loves kids, marrying me might have been a miscalculation. Our marital life faded away after 5 years. One day, I reached my limit and tried to negotiate for making some family time with Vincent. After dinner, as he was immersed in his hobbies, I tried to speak to him, but he didn't respond. Engrossed in some radio commentary.
Go, go, go. That's it. Overtake. Do it.
Vincent, fist clenched in his right hand, kept cheering passionately, completely ignoring me. It was as if I wasn't even in his sight.
What kind of marriage is this? Normally, wouldn't you notice someone standing right in front of you? Is it strange that I feel this way?
As I was lost in these sad thoughts, the game ended, and Vincent, throwing his earphones onto the sofa, began to complain.
Damn it! What's he doing? That jockey needs to get it together. I've put a lot of money on this.
It seemed Vincent was listening to a horse racing commentary. I couldn't help but wonder, horse racing over his wife's important talk?
Hey, I need to talk to you. What? Can't you see I'm not in the mood for pointless chatter right now? What, you've got something important? Just get to the point then.
Vincent glared at me irritably, taking out his frustration about his loss on me. I was disappointed by his rude words and attitude.
Why do I have to bear the brunt of your frustration over losing a bet?
I blurted out my sadness before I knew it, and Vincent snapped back, irritated.
What did you say? I've been waiting patiently for your horse racing to finish because I have something to talk about. Why do I deserve to be spoken to like this? What have I done?
There was also the loneliness of not being paid attention to. When he was at home, he devoted his time to his hobbies, neglecting me completely. It became clear during this fight that he thinks providing money is enough to be with me.
Shut up. Stop chirping like a little bird. Talk to me when I'm in a better mood. When are you ever home for us to talk? You're always out on business entertaining, and when you are at home, it's all about you. What am I to you? I didn't get married just to be a housekeeper.
My pent-up feelings erupted. I had never raised my voice like this, but I couldn't bear Vincent's harsh words and attitude. When we were dating, he was devoted, treating me like a princess. He always put me first, acted lovingly, and cherished me. I spent days filled with love, thinking marrying him would lead to a happy marriage. That's why I accepted his proposal. Initially, our marriage was enviable. What a perfect husband, everyone would say. I thought our happy days would continue. But that only lasted the first 2 years. Then, his selfishness and tyranny became evident. Now, I'm treated no better than a housekeeper. I cater to his picky eating without complaint, clean like I'm shadowing my MIL, with strict checks as if not a speck of dust is allowed. One time, he even mocked me in front of relatives for not being able to have children. My mom had to intervene, but his harassment never stopped. When we were alone, how many times did he call me useless? I endured these humiliating days because of the memories of his kindness when we were dating. I was grateful for the love he once showed me, so no matter how badly he treated me, I could endure it with a smile.
But now, what about him? The man before me seems like a completely different person from back then. He shouts at me on a whim, showing annoyance at my very existence. Why is he still living with me if he finds me so bothersome? I'd rather he just leave me than continue like this.
As these sad thoughts crossed my mind, Vincent uttered unbelievable words.
You've become so annoying. When we were dating, you'd do anything I said, and you were pretty cute, so I married you. But I never expected you to become such a troublesome older lady after marriage. Being with you just irritates me. You're useless, can't even have kids. You're just like a housekeeper now.
His words left me in despair, speechless.
He doesn't see me as a woman anymore. I had suspected it, but hearing it directly from him was a shock, and I couldn't find words to respond.
What were those 10 years for me? I devotedly supported him in his business, believing he loved me despite everything. I believed this rough patch would pass, and we'd return to happy days like before. I believed I was the most cherished woman to him. But now, he looks at me as if I was something inferior, annoyed by my presence. Is this the reward for supporting him for 10 years? If so, this is too cruel a treatment from God. My sadness turned to hatred, then to anger.
I'm tired of being with you.
Vincent saw me clenching my fists, unable to speak. He sighed in annoyance, grabbed his cigarettes, and went outside. His wallet and mobile phone were in his pants, and I knew he wouldn't come back home that day. As expected, he didn't return home that night. I stared at the door he left through, dazed. The happy times, the moments I thought were joyful, they all flashed through my mind. Realizing I was alone, I cried out loud. This fight created a significant rift between Vincent and me. He seemed to dread even seeing my face, returning home only after I was asleep to grab a change of clothes and leave. I'm afraid of being hurt by his cutting words like that day. I too couldn't bring myself to talk to him. If he asked for a divorce now, I had nowhere to go, no place to return to. My parents passed away in a car accident right after I got married. When I lost them both within a year, I became like a shell of a person. Vincent was the one who supported me then, and at that time, I truly felt grateful to be married to him. Since then, Vincent was the only family I had. I had no other acquaintances to rely on. Except only my FIL and my L. But I couldn't bring myself to confide in Vincent's parents. They were kind to me, but no parent would be happy hearing such complaints about their son. I could even risk being disliked by them. Back then, I was too scared to take any action, a real coward. Maybe I was destined to live as a housekeeper by Vincent's side for the rest of my life. With these thoughts, I spent many nights crying myself to sleep. Then, after some time, Vincent unexpectedly returned home in a good mood. Despite not speaking for over 3 months, he came home while I was awake, carrying a box of shortcake as a peace offering.
Charlotte, this is for you.
What is it? His sudden change in demeanor caught me off guard, and I looked at him apprehensively. Vincent, noticing my wary gaze, smiled awkwardly and handed me the box of cakes.
I've been wrong. I regret being so cold to you that day. I want to spend happy days with you again. Can we make up? Seeing Vincent bow his head in apology made my tears flow. The kind Vincent I knew had returned.
I remember hugging him, filled with faint hope. True to his word, he started treating me with care again. He was as kind as when we were lovers, made an effort to come straight home, and prioritized spending time with me despite his busy schedule. We increased our time together as a couple.
The truth is, the company was struggling at that time. I was reckless and took out my frustration on you. I'm really sorry for making you feel bad.
One afternoon, while watching a movie on the couch, Vincent stroked my hair and shared his feelings from that time.
No, I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have blamed you without knowing the circumstances.
The air was finally clear between us. I thought we could start living happily as a couple again.
That belief lasted until a phone call came to Vincent's mobile phone.
One night during dinner. It was an unusual call from a woman's name. Vincent hurried to answer it, stepping outside as if he didn't want me to hear the conversation. Was it an important business contact? I thought so, but something felt off for the first time. Since the day we reconciled, Vincent had taken all his calls in front of me. The only exception was during our tumultuous rough patch. Back then, thinking about it now, Vincent persistently avoided making calls in front of me.
A bad premonition crept up on me.
So, when Vincent returned, I tried to coax the truth out of him.
It's unusual for you to take a call outside. Someone from work? Eh? Oh, yeah, something like that. Didn't I tell you about resigning as president and starting a new venture? It was about that, an employee consultation.
Vincent was planning to hand over his current real estate company to a trusted subordinate and take on the role of chairman, overseeing both his current and a new company.
Everyone seems anxious without me. They keep calling me for advice. A change in leadership is a big deal for a company.
Vincent talked more than usual, desperately trying to cover something up. It was clear to me.
The word affair crossed my mind. Vincent was cheating on me behind my back.
The moment I realized this, my love for him instantly cooled.
That sounds tough. Don't overdo it.
With this, I decided to thoroughly investigate Vincent's infidelity. Handling the monthly household budget efficiently, saving over $30,000. I managed to find a lawyer specializing in infidelity cases and immediately hired them. I also hired an investigator who confirmed that Vincent was cheating with a 20-year-old girl from his office.
Here are the documents summarizing their relationship.
The investigator handed me the report, and I was shocked to read it. Vincent had been in a relationship with this woman for over 5 years, with periods of separation. They had rekindled their relationship on the day he called her during our dinner.
So that's why.
The reason for our strained relationship was because things were going well between Vincent and this woman. He reached out to me for reconciliation only after being rejected by her. I was just a convenient piece for him. Realizing this, I decided to meet someone. Taking advantage of a weekend when Vincent was on a business trip, I headed to a specific location, determined to get my revenge. After a while, Vincent's new company was established, and he successfully stepped down as president. We had a lavish dinner at home to celebrate. Congratulations on your hard work, Mr. President. Managing 2 companies will be even more challenging, but good luck. Since then, our relationship had returned to the hellish atmosphere of our rough patch. His relationship with the other woman was going well again. The investigation revealed that Vincent's mistress was possessive and jealous, and he stopped treating me as a woman to avoid upsetting her and getting dumped. He deliberately created a cold atmosphere, using harsh words and actions to keep me at a distance. When irritated, he treated me like a punching bag. That's how he had been handling our relationship. All this was because his mistress, taking advantage of the fact I didn't use social media, exposed everything on hers. The investigator found it, and Vincent's and her thoughts were completely exposed. I had all the evidence I needed. Then, while I was thinking this, Vincent, with a cold gaze, let out a big sigh and handed me a piece of paper.
I don't want to eat your cooking. Wasting money on such things. Do you even realize who's allowing you to live like this? I wasn't giving you money each month for this nonsense.
Vincent glared at me furiously as he yelled. But his gaze didn't intimidate me at all. Looking at the paper he handed me, I saw it was a divorce application.
I've found someone else. I want a divorce.
Vincent announced the divorce as if it were the most natural thing, not showing any remorse. He probably thought that after the past 6 months, I would readily accept it. He probably thought that way. Though his thoughts were transparent, I chose not to say anything. Fine. Here, the divorce application. I quickly signed it and presented it back to him with the brightest smile. Vincent was astonished. Why are you agreeing so readily? He seemed to want to ask, but before he could, I started packing. I already knew he would present me the divorce papers today after seeing his mistress's social media post. All I had to prepare was a bag with my essentials.
I'll arrange for the movers myself, and we can proceed with the rest through the lawyers.
Goodbye. Ignoring Vincent's attempts to stop me, I quickly left the house. Despite the hellish life I endured, there were indeed happy moments. I decided to part ways with the home I shared with him and headed somewhere specific. The next day, I called the company where his mistress worked. She was a new employee at the headquarters where Vincent held his position. A mistake from a drinking party that turned into a relationship. She was 5 months pregnant. Likely with Vincent's child. I decided to confront them with this shocking truth and summoned them.
Please come to the chairman's family home tonight. We need to discuss something. The time is.
I specifically named the mistress in the call, told her this much. And hung up without saying more, waiting for night to fall. At the appointed time, they arrived at the family home. Vincent, fuming, stormed in, having called the house repeatedly.
What's going on, Mom? Why didn't you answer the phone? What is this?
Entering the living room, Vincent immediately started berating his mother in a haughty tone. However, as soon as he and his mistress entered, they were shaken by the odd scene before them.
What do you mean, what?
Can't you see?
I thought we'd have a nice dinner with everyone. I've invited your relatives.
There, the representatives of the Henderson family were sipping tea, eagerly awaiting their return.
Hello, Vincent. It's been a while. You said you have something to tell us? Who's this lady?
She looks pregnant. Don't you have a seat for her? The relatives, unaware of the situation, asked. Amidst them, only the FIL and MIL remained reactionless, watching Vincent and his companion with a gentle smile.
Vincent, you have something to tell us about this lady, right?
It was Mael, Talia, who broke the silence. Talia, always kind and graceful, spoke softly, but her eyes were not smiling. Instead, they were shrouded in an almost frightening darkness, making Vincent shiver.
What do you mean, something to say?
No need to play dumb. We've heard everything from Charlotte. It was Fael, Keith, who delivered this blow to a faltering Vincent. In stark contrast to Talia, Keith looked at him sternly. The moment he heard Keith's words, Vincent glared at me in panic and spat out harsh words.
What have you done? You're no longer my DIL, so don't meddle in family matters.
Not his DIL.
What does that mean?
Vincent's outburst led the Henderson family to look at him curiously, voicing their questions.
He was unwittingly digging his own grave, an utter fool. To think I once fell for such a man made me nauseous.
As I watched in disbelief, Talia, now furious, spoke up.
How dare my son neglect such a good DIL and become infatuated with another woman? Shame on the Henderson family. Realize your foolishness.
Talia, in her suit, stood resolutely like the owner of a high-end restaurant, her presence overwhelming everyone. Her words must have been terrifying for Vincent. Overwhelmed by their presence, he stumbled backward and fell. Thought you got away with an easy divorce? Don't underestimate me. I've already spoken with Keith and Talia, explained the situation, and they've given me permission to claim alimony from you. They want to maintain a good relationship with me and said they'll disown you from the Henderson family. Approaching the frightened Vincent, I leaned down and whispered in a voice only he could hear, my expression menacing. That day, I bravely sought Keith and Talia, crying as I explained everything. As soon as I showed them the evidence, Keith bowed his head to me, and Talia offered support, saying I should always rely on them.
I never imagined my son would stoop to such disgraceful behavior.
Thank you for telling us, Charlotte.
You've endured so much pain.
Keith and Talia said, treating me kindly. For the first time in a long while, I felt the warmth of people's kindness. After that, both Keith and Talia were pleased to help with my plan. They informed the relatives who had celebrated our marriage about the situation and arranged for no one to side with Vincent. They had called everyone to ensure this.
Never come to this house again. I don't want to see your face. You're a disgrace.
Talia repeated many times. For Keith and Talia, who shared a loving relationship, infidelity was unthinkable. That their son had committed it was unforgivable. Oh, I almost forgot. As I turned to Vincent's mistress, who watched everything unfold in shock, she looked at me fearfully. I smiled reassuringly at her and handed her a medical report, revealing a shocking truth.
That child isn't Vincent's.
We already know. My bold statement shocked her, and Vincent too turned to us, confused and angry.
Before our divorce, Vincent and I couldn't conceive, so we got tested. The results showed I was fine. The problem was Vincent. He was diagnosed with azoospermia.
The medical report confirmed my words.
How exactly did you conceive Vincent's child, then?
I'd love to know how. Can you share that knowledge? My mocking tone visibly drained the color from the mistress's face. Vincent was enraged and started questioning to her, but Keith and the other men held him back. Through this, I successfully drove a wedge between Vincent and his mistress, leading to their breakup. The mistress ended up raising the child alone, and Vincent, now desperate, came begging me for reconciliation, which I promptly rejected. I claimed a substantial alimony in the divorce through my lawyer. Vincent, faced with the overwhelming evidence, was too disheartened to resist and complied with the lawyer's demands. Now, I work as an office clerk at the company run by Keith, helped by him and Talia.
If there's anything we can do, just let us know, Keith said.
You're not atoning for our son's sins. We truly think of you as our daughter, Charlotte, Talia added. Talia thanked me for having the courage to come to them, expressing deep gratitude. Despite your suffering, you've been so kind to us. We always looked forward to your letters and gifts, wondering when you would visit us again. She said, keeping my letters and pressed flowers in a cherished treasure box. If you don't mind, you can rely on us as much as you want from now on. Don't hesitate to think of this as your second home. Vincent, now disowned, was no longer allowed even to enter the Henderson home. After a month, he stopped trying to visit forcefully. Now that the turmoil has settled, I live with Keith and Talia. They offered me a home, concerned about me living alone.
Why don't you come and live with us as our adopted child?
They loved me so much that they even suggested adoption, and now I live happily with Keith and Talia as their true daughter. My daughter Emma was getting married, and we were off to a family meeting. When we entered the designated room, Phil Henry and Mil Lauren were already seated. They looked like they were in the middle of a conversation, smirking unpleasantly. Looking at the table, I noticed that only 3 settings were prepared on our side. I realized this was their sly way of harassing us. "Please, take a seat." "Oh, just the 2 of you?" "We're a single-mother household," I replied, lifting the corners of my eyes, trying to stay calm. But Lauren let out a mocking laugh. "Oh, that's right. Maybe you should take this in a food storage container? Single mothers are poor, right?" Lauren covered her mouth, trying to suppress her laughter. Despite her harsh words, I kept my expression unchanged. Seeing enough, Emma tapped my shoulder. "That's awful. Mom, let's go." "Why leave?" "If it means you, who've sacrificed everything for me, have to suffer, I'd rather not get married." Touched by Emma's kindness, I smiled. "It's okay. Just wait a bit." Then, an employee came from behind with a food storage container. "Here, please take this home," he offered to Lauren. Henry and Lauren were taken aback, stunned. "If being poor is about low income, please, take it." "Huh?" "My name is Rachel. In my 50s, I feel like I've reached the midpoint of my life, living in a slightly spacious single-family home with my daughter, Emma. When Emma is at school, I sometimes feel a pang of loneliness in the quiet of our living room. That's when I make it a ritual to prepare 2 mugs of tea, one for me and the other for my late husband, Nathan. Pouring tea for Nathan and imagining he might be with me brings comfort. Nathan was diagnosed with cancer about 20 years ago and passed away suddenly as we were about to start his treatment. On his deathbed, he implored me to take care of Emma. She must become someone admirable. At that time, Emma was too young to remember much about her dad. To fulfill my promise to Nathan and to prevent Emma from feeling lonely or sad, I raised her single-handedly, balancing work, household duties, and parenting. Despite being a single mother, I managed to send Emma to college. Emma grew up to be academically excellent, beautiful, and a genuinely kind and wonderful woman. She's my pride and joy. After graduating, she got a job and started living on her own. I can't always rely on you, Mom. It's time I do something in return for what you've done for me. Don't worry about me, just do your best. Eat properly, don't stay up too late, and... Come on, I'm not a child anymore. What are you saying? You'll always be my precious child. The night before she moved out, Emma and I stayed up late, talking about the past, the future, and about her dad. We never ran out of memories to share, losing track of time. Even after Emma started living by herself, she would send various texts to my mobile phone. She would complain about unpacking, cooking, training at work, and colleagues. Each text made me feel as if Emma was right beside me, probably feeling lonely in her new life. But as time passed, the texts became less frequent. I assumed that Emma was finding her own way. I guess Emma is doing well. The lack of texts seemed to prove that Emma's days were fulfilling. And even the tea I brewed for Nathan seemed to nod in agreement. A year and a half after Emma started her job, I received a call from her. She sounded happy. "It's been a while," she said. "Mom, there's someone I want you to meet next Sunday. Do you have some time?" "Oh, it's been a while. Yes, I do have some time on Sunday." "Then, I'll come home on Sunday. Is noon okay?" "Yes, that's fine. Be careful coming here. It's been a while since I've seen you. You'll be surprised. Bye." After saying that, Emma hung up, and I stared silently at the screen. I wondered how long it had been since we last talked on the phone. Her unusually happy tone over the phone intrigued me, but when Sunday came, I was indeed surprised, just as Emma had said. At the door was Emma and a young man named Ryan. Ryan was not dressed casually, but in a casual suit, looking slightly nervous. "Nice to meet you. I'm Ryan, and I've been seeing Emma for a while now." Ryan, who introduced himself, was tall with features like a movie star, and came off as a very polite and good young man. "Nice to meet you. Please, come in." After inviting them into the living room and making tea, we sat at the table where Emma gave an update and introduced him. Then, Emma said shyly, "So, Mom, the reason I wanted you to meet him is because we are thinking about getting married." Married? Though I had anticipated it, the fact that Emma had found someone still surprised me internally. I kept my composure, looking at Ryan, who now had a more serious expression. "Yes. I proposed to Emma recently, and I wanted to meet you, her mom." I paused for a moment before responding, and I said, "I see. I didn't know Emma has been seeing someone as wonderful as you." "Ryan, Emma doesn't have a dad, and I raised her by myself." "Yes, Emma told me she grew up in a household without a father." "Emma is my treasure, my precious daughter. Can you promise to protect her and make her happy?" "Of course. I am confident that I can make Emma happier than anyone else in this world," Ryan answered firmly, without flinching at my stern attitude. Had he hesitated, I might not have approved of their marriage. "All right. Please take good care of Emma." Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other, relieved, and smiled happily. Seeing them like this made me smile too. I think Nathan would have smiled in the same way if he were here. Months after sending off a happy Emma and Ryan, Emma took a long break and came home. She happily talked about her work and Ryan, but occasionally she looked troubled. When asked, she'd quickly change the subject, saying, "It's nothing, Mom." Whenever Emma wants to talk about something or lies, she shrugs her shoulders. This time, Emma did it again, so I was sure something had happened. "Hey, Emma. How about we try that new place? It's a brand new cafe here." I showed her the screen of my mobile phone. Her eyes lit up at the sight of the cafe. "Ah, I wanted to go there. The coffee is popular, everyone at work says it's good." Then it's settled. The next day, Emma and I walked to the cafe. After ordering coffee to go, we walked for a while. "Mom, thank you for accepting my marriage with Ryan. He seems sincere. Take good care of each other, Emma." When we reached a large park, Emma started to talk. "Actually, I went to the in-laws' house. I feel like I'm not well liked by them." Emma's story went back a month. When she visited the in-laws' house, Henry and Lauren seemed skeptical at first glance. "Nice to meet you, I'm Emma. I'm dating Ryan." "Hey, Ryan. Are you sure about her?" Lauren interrupted Emma's greeting. "What do you mean?" "Well, she looks rather plain, doesn't she? Her clothes, her makeup, it all screams poverty. She doesn't match you at all." Without a word of congratulations, they blatantly insulted Emma. "Mom, that's rude. You shouldn't talk about my girlfriend like that." "Don't you think so too?" Lauren sought agreement from Henry, who was sitting next to her, and Henry nodded in affirmation. "Ah. Is your family that poor? Do your parents work?" "My mom works, and my dad passed away when I was young." "Single mother, huh? I figured as much," Henry said with a strangely satisfied look and scoffed. "Dad? It must be for the money. We come from a respectable family. You should stay away from a woman like that.
How can you say that? Emma is not like that. I know her best.
Ryan just doesn't realize yet that there are many who would want to marry you for our assets. And then, he even suggested introducing Ryan to a daughter of an acquaintance. Lauren agreed with this proposal, pleased with the idea. That would be better. After all, we know someone respectable who works for a major company. Not a match for a single mother's family. Don't you think so, Ryan? Seeing Lauren happily agree, Ryan raised his voice.
Enough from both of you, Dad and Mom.
The conversation went nowhere, and Ryan and Emma left the house. Ryan later told me that Henry and Lauren have a strong sense of elitism. Emma, I'm really sorry. My parents said such awful things and hurt you. Emma was apologized to multiple times by Ryan, who promised to always protect her. Sitting on a park bench listening to this, I had to suppress my anger from exploding. So, what do Ryan's parents say about the marriage? Last week, we went to their house again. We faced some snide remarks, but Ryan convinced them, and they agreed to our marriage. Are you okay with that, Emma? Emma bit her lip and shrugged. Yeah, it's okay. We won't be living with them, and I can endure it. Is that so? It was clear that the relationship between Ryan's parents and Emma was strained. Even with Ryan's protection, there would be limits. Knowing they would face hardships, I wished I could advise them to reconsider the marriage. But having already given my blessing, I couldn't say that. Even in this short time, Emma looked downcast. Thinking she might always look this way saddened me. So, about the family meeting, I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't go. Why? If it's going to make you feel bad, Mom, I don't want to have the family meeting. Emma's eyes seemed to well up, even though she didn't cry. She was considering my feelings. Touched by her kindness, I smiled. Don't worry about me. Let's have the family meeting so that everyone can acknowledge your marriage. Under the cold sky, Emma and I sipped our cold coffee on our way home. When Emma told Ryan she wanted to have the family meeting, he was very surprised. And he kept worrying about her, saying, "You don't have to push yourself. I'm fine. Mom says not to worry. If you say so, I'll talk to my parents about it." And so, on the day, Emma and I went to the venue. Though we didn't say anything to each other, I decided to stand tall and face them with confidence. We took a cab to the hotel, and both Emma and I took a deep breath at the entrance. But Emma looked anxious. When Lauren specified this hotel, she made a snide remark. "It's that famous hotel you see in commercials. A place your family wouldn't be familiar with." Emma took it to heart and became completely intimidated by the unnecessary comment. I gently pulled Emma closer by the shoulder, signaling with my eyes that everything would be okay, and we started walking together. We ran into Ryan at the entrance. He seemed to have arrived earlier and was waiting for the elevator. "Thank you, Emma and Rachel, for having time today." Ryan appeared much more nervous than the last time we met, sweating on his forehead despite it being winter. "No, thank you. We have been looking forward to today." You might have heard from Emma, but this hotel is where my dad works." Ryan seemed uneasy and worried about his parents possibly saying something offensive, given their behavior in front of Emma. I responded confidently, "Yes, I'm aware. No need to worry." "Ryan, you look better when you're confident." As Ryan looked up, the elevator doors opened, and we stepped in, riding up to the higher floor. Upon entering the room, Henry and Lauren were already seated, seemingly in the middle of a conversation, smiling creepily. Noticing that 3 sets of tableware were prepared on our side, I realized it was their sly form of harassment. "Ah, we've been waiting for you. Please, have a seat." "Oh, just the two of you?"
We're a single mother household.
I replied, lifting the corners of my eyes, trying to remain calm. But Lauren let out a mocking laugh. "That's right. Maybe you should take this in a food storage container? Since you're poor." "Huh?
Single mothers are poor with low income, right?"
"That's right.
The income of a single mother is predictably low."
Lauren covered her mouth, trying to hold back her laughter. Despite their harsh words, I remained expressionless. Unable to stand it, Ryan cried out.
"Dad, Mom, stop it. This is too disrespectful."
At that moment, Emma tapped my shoulder. "That's awful. Mom, let's go."
"Why?" "If having me means you suffer, Mom, I'd rather not get married."
Hearing this, Ryan turned around in surprise. "Emma." While watching them, I clearly said, "It's not necessary.
Just wait a moment."
Then, an employee came from behind with a food storage container. "Here, please take this home," he offered to Lauren. Henry and Lauren were taken aback, stunned.
"If being poor is about low income, please, take it." "Huh? At least Rachel is far from poor,"
I firmly stated, and the employee, with efficient movements, placed the container down and stepped back, leaving Henry and Lauren outraged.
"Is this some kind of disrespect?" "That's it. You're fired. Both of you, please calm down. She's been a friend of mine since childhood. The rudeness is on your part."
The employee turned back to me, smiled briefly, and said, "The division manager always seems so busy."
"Division manager?"
Lauren and Henry gasped, tumbling out of their chairs like in a cartoon. Henry was sweating not just on his forehead but all over his face. Though it wasn't my intention to hide it, I am the daughter of the president of the group company that owns this famous hotel. I've worked for this company for many years, continuing even after getting married without resigning. When I was pregnant with Emma, I took the same maternity leave as other employees and raised Emma while working in Nathan's stead. By the time Emma entered college, my efforts were recognized, and I was promoted to division manager, unbeknownst to Henry and Lauren.
"Are both of you okay?"
I addressed Henry and Lauren with a composed voice as they lay sprawled on the floor.
"Today, we came here for the family meeting regarding the marriage of my precious daughter and Ryan. It seems you have had quite a bit to say to my daughter."
I glared at them, causing Henry and Lauren to tremble and shrink back.
"I've worked hard to provide love and education for Emma since her father, my husband, died from illness when she was young."
Ryan swallowed hard.
"I believe in Emma, and I trust the person she has chosen. Even if he comes from parents who judge people by their income and are rude, I see Ryan as a polite and respectable young man, an important new member of our family."
I paused for a moment before continuing.
"I would think you feel the same about your children. So, I ask again, do you approve of my daughter's marriage to Ryan?"
The room fell silent, with Henry and Lauren trembling, and Ryan looking nervous. Emma had never seen me take such a stance before.
"How about it?"
I pressed again, and Lauren, looking frustrated, glanced at Henry. Henry, pale-faced and flustered, hurriedly said,
"Of course. Director, we hope for a closer relationship from now on." "Today, I am here not as a director but as Emma's mother,"
I stated firmly, looking at Henry.
"And if we're talking about work, isn't it true that Henry will soon be leaving here?" "What do you mean?"
I had investigated Henry's reputation within the company up until today. Knowing Emma's dad was Henry, I remembered his name. His condescending attitude towards Emma and his notorious behavior among hotel staff were well known. Henry was infamous for his high-handed behavior towards subordinates and was reported to be avoiding work under the guise of attending meetings. A hearing had been scheduled to address these issues.
So, that's what it is. You should reflect on your actions.
I left Henry speechless with my rebuke. Lauren stood up, face red, and lunged at me with a screech. However, I dodged, and she fell over. To the fallen Lauren, I delivered my final statement.
And know this, if you ever interfere with Emma and Ryan's happiness again, I will not remain silent.
With that, I firmly addressed the two, then led Emma and Ryan out of the room. Of course, I left the follow-up to the employee who has been a friend since childhood. Half a year has passed. The heat is relentless for someone in their 50s like me. The weather forecast predicts another scorcher today. As I walked to the supermarket, I thought back on the events. After the family meeting, Ryan apologized to Emma and me numerous times.
I'm really sorry for my parents' rude behavior.
It's okay. We've seen your sincerity.
I'm truly ashamed. I don't want to associate with parents like that anymore.
But they're the ones who raised you, right?
No, it was my uncle who raised me. My parents left me with him until I was a college student.
I had secretly wondered why Ryan's demeanor was so different from Henry and Lauren's arrogance. Understanding it was his uncle who raised him made sense. Ryan recently cut ties with Henry and Lauren after they approached him for money. Following the family meeting, Lauren called in a panic.
Ryan, your dad lost his job. He was subjected to an internal hearing for negligence, making no sense at all.
Ryan responded indifferently.
That's tough. What do you mean, acting like it's none of your business? We're struggling without money, send us some. Mom, I heard about your spending habits from my uncle. You have a problem with wastefulness. What are you talking about? Maybe if you stopped wasting money, you'd have enough to live on. Don't rely on me. Such unnecessary talk.
Then again, there were several calls, and Lauren had run through her savings due to her spending habits, even going as far as to say that Henry's retirement allowance was running out. Struggling to make ends meet, Henry and Lauren did not just ask for money but also reached out to me, wanting me to connect them over the phone. Morning, noon, or night, they didn't care when they called, which finally seemed to make Ryan explode in anger.
Dad and Mom, please, enough. I don't want to trouble Emma or Rachel either.
With that, he hung up the call and set Henry and Lauren's number to be blocked. Not stopping there, Ryan changed his mobile phone number and moved to a new apartment with Emma, changing their address. Of course, this was not communicated to Henry and Lauren, who remained unaware of Ryan and Emma's whereabouts afterward. Nothing stood in the way of their happy married life anymore. From what I've heard from Emma, they have been living peacefully since then. As for me, I've managed to maintain a good relationship with them, dining out with Emma and Ryan monthly. This incident made me realize a huge misunderstanding on my part. While I worked hard, thinking I was doing my best not to trouble Emma and raised her, I had completely stopped going on trips, which was my hobby. It seems Emma believed she was the reason I gave up my hobby, thinking my sacrifices were because of her. The efforts I made to spare Emma any hardship or worry ended up worrying her instead. From now on, don't worry about me.
I want you to use your time and money for yourself.
Until Emma told me this, I was enjoying living by myself at home, but afterwards, I started traveling more on weekends. As someone who loved domestic trips, I began visiting places I had wanted to go and places that held dear memories. And strangely, working hard daily made me feel it was okay to spend money and time for myself. Moreover, exploring the latest hotels started to benefit my work. Projects and such began to progress more smoothly, bringing me luck. As I thought of Emma's influence, I finished paying for my shopping and left the store. Today's shopping was for groceries to cook dinner together with the three of us. Glancing up, I saw Emma approaching from the opposite direction. "Mom, are you okay? Don't strain yourself, let me carry that for you." Emma hurried over and effortlessly took the bag from my right hand.
"Oh, thank you. Shall we go then?" "Yes. Ryan said he'd come over as soon as he's done with work. He's looking forward to your chicken dish,"
Emma said with a smile.
"We'll need to make plenty then."
Recently, we received wonderful news that Emma is pregnant. Ryan, Emma, and of course, I were all delighted. I'm planning a surprise for Emma and Ryan, looking forward to sending clothes and toys for the grandchild, though it's a secret from them. While I wonder if it's too early, I know before long, the child will be born. Though this new life has just been conceived, I'm already eagerly anticipating the day I can meet them. Suddenly, the electricity bill skyrocketed. In a panic, we called the utility company, and the technician came over, looking puzzled.
"Have you seen this wire before?"
As my husband, Sam, and I rushed over, the technician carefully moved a plant nearby to make it easier for us to see. From an external outlet of our house, a strange wiring extended, heading towards the in-laws' house.
"Do you know anything about this wiring?"
Sam and I exchanged glances. We were probably thinking the same thing.
"Hey, Sam. Could this be?" "Yeah, no doubt. This is why our electricity bill suddenly spiked."
Sam then reached out to the outlet and quickly unplugged the wiring. The moment he did it, a high-pitched scream came from the direction of the in-laws' house.
"Ah!"
It must be Mael, Nicola. Then, some hysterical muttering was heard, and the voice came out of the door, heading our way. And there, Nicola burst out from the garden. "I am Mary, a 32-year-old housewife. My hobby is eating sweets. Every day, I gather information about sweets by asking friends or researching on my own. Sam, my kind husband, always accompanies me in this hobby. Sam and I, both the same age, have been together since college. I have always loved Sam for his kindness, unchanged from the moment we met. Incidentally, I also adored Tony and Nicola, Sam's parents who raised him. Many of my married friends struggle with their Maels. I've even heard stories that ended in divorce due to issues with the MIL. Fortunately, such problems were irrelevant to our family. Nicola, who shares my love for sweets, always delights in the treats I bring over, and my Fael, Tony, though a man of few words, always gives a sense of comfort with his constant smiles. Both of them are dear to me, and I like them so much. Tony and Nicola now live about a 30-minute drive away. Not too close, yet not too far, just the right distance. But sometimes, I think, would it be possible to live together with such a couple? Not that I want to live together. But, perhaps, it could work out well. I was fond of them to the point of entertaining such thoughts. However, the world isn't always so sweet, as I would later come to realize the truth. One day, I was baffled by the news Sam shared with me.
"What? Tony and Nicola?"
Turns out, Tony and Nicola were moving into the vacant house next door to us. I had assumed their in-laws' house was owned, but it turned out to be a rental. They were considering moving since their place was getting old. And when they found out the house next to ours was vacant, they set their sights on it. It was an unexpected close-distance living arrangement. I was instantly overwhelmed by anxiety. We had been getting along fine with Tony and Nicola, but would it continue to be okay? Living next door meant we could see each other every day if we wanted. I liked Tony and Nicola, but seeing them every day might be too much. But it was too late to say, "It's too close, so please don't move in." When Sam heard about the move, he gently advised Tony and Nicola that it might not be a good idea. However, they didn't listen, saying, "We're so close now, it'll be fine." I wanted to kick myself for my previously optimistic thought that living together could be possible. As my anxiety grew, Tony and Nicola moved in. Though I greeted them warily, things seemed fine at first. We kept a good distance, and some boundaries were established. But as they settled in, Nicola began to cross those boundaries. That was the force that overcame all the actions we didn't want her to do. Unannounced visits became the norm, and when she came over, they acted as if our house was her own. Not only that, but our actions seemed to be constantly monitored. Then, after finishing an unannounced visit and dinner inspection one day, Nicola made an outrageous suggestion. "Hey, Mary, I've been thinking, why don't you stop locking the door?"
What?
I couldn't believe my ears. Because can you believe it? In this day and age, Nicola was suggesting we keep our house unlocked, making it accessible to anyone at any time. That's not reassuring at all. Of course, it's unwelcome. Ever since Nicola moved in, even the doorbell ringing startles me, and now there's the added possibility of Nicola slipping into our house unnoticed. Again, of course, that's unwelcome. Given how dangerous things are these days. I guess not locking the door does feel a bit scary, I said with a smile, trying not to offend, but Nicola frowned.
Oh, Mary, you worry too much. But it's okay. Once we get to know the neighbors better, I'll make sure they look out for us. Until then, well, Tony and I are around. We'll be popping by often,
she said, her words coming from a place of goodwill, which I appreciated. That's why I couldn't say that her frequent visits were becoming a burden. But there's only so much one can take. Last week, Nicola came over every day for 7 days. I end up having tea with Nicola at our house every day. It's no wonder frustrations arise when we're together so much. I've really come to understand that maintaining distance is crucial in the relationship between a mother-in-law and her son's wife. Nicola has been doing as she pleases, leaving unwanted plants in our yard or planting flowers without asking me. If it were once in a few months, I could tolerate it, but daily is a different story. Regarding the locking of the doors, Nicola has brought it up several times since. I've managed to convince her by emphasizing security consciousness. But then, Nicola started asking for a spare key. That's something I'll have to get Sam to refuse. There's no way I can give such a terrifying item to Nicola as she is now. Though Nicola can be difficult, I hadn't come to dislike her yet. Her meddling comes from a place of kindness. I felt more guilt about rejecting her than anything. But over time, my feelings started to change. Whether it's me who has changed, Nicola, or both, I can't say. But I began to feel discomfort and irritation at Nicola's remarks. It was a few months after Nicola and her family moved in. By then, Nicola's visits after lunch had become a routine part of our household. As for Tony, when I asked what he was up to, it seems he's usually out walking or shopping by himself. I suggested, "You could go with him." But she declined, saying, "Walking tires me out." Lately, Nicola has turned into a rather spiteful mother-in-law. When I make tea, she used to simply thank me, but now she always has a complaint: it's lukewarm or it's too weak. Whenever she opens her mouth, it's either gossip or criticism. Being with Nicola makes me feel negative. Yet, I can't just refuse her, so I nod along and force a smile. It's terrible, isn't it?
The grass in their yard has been left to grow wild. I'm almost tempted to cut it myself.
Nicola was passionately discussing a neighbor's neglected garden today.
Then I called out to them.
"Oh." She stopped talking suddenly, so I instinctively followed her gaze, which had turned towards the bookshelf. Perhaps she found a book that interested her. It would be nice if we could read together in silence. Did you find a book that interests you? I was about to stand up and head to the bookshelf when Nicola reached for something not on the bookshelf but on the shelf next to it.
Nicola! That's not okay.
I saw what she had taken and reached out hastily. But Nicola opened it with an unaffected expression.
Oh my.
Just look at this, Mary. Didn't we overspend last month?
Look at this electricity bill. It's twice what we pay at our house.
Nicola was looking over our household budget book as if it were a gossip magazine.
Please stop. Give it back,
I said, snatching it away, and Nicola laughed. No need to panic.
It's just that, Mary, you seem a bit bad at saving, aren't you?
Poor Sam, having a wife who can't save money.
You should try a little harder, okay?
I could feel my face getting hot. The cover and spine clearly labeled it as a household budget book. Yet, the audacity to open someone else's budget book was unbelievable. And sweets, too.
I love sweets as well, so I understand, but a wife who can't save shouldn't be entitled to sweets, should she?
Nicola went on to criticize me for spending too much on groceries and unbelievable electricity bills. Then bragged about how good she is at saving. After a while, she seemed satisfied and left. After Nicola's departure, I was so frustrated that I couldn't stop crying. The stress might have been building up. I just can't take it anymore. I cried until Sam came home.
Mom's words don't have to bother you. I know it's hard. I'm really sorry. I'll tell her not to come over anymore.
Thanks, I appreciate it. After being comforted by Sam, I felt a bit better and decided to discuss something else. It was about the electricity bill. Just like Nicola pointed out, it was high. There hadn't been any changes, yet the bill had suddenly spiked these past few months. I was concerned, but dealing with Nicola had distracted me. Sam looked at the electricity bill and frowned.
This is definitely strange. Yeah, isn't it? The next bill is coming soon, right? If it's still odd, we should contact the power company.
A few days later, a bill arrived for over $1,300, more than double the usual. We hurriedly decided to have the power company come and check. The power company employee thoroughly inspected everything. Then, we were called over to see something peculiar.
Did you know about this line?
Rushing over, the employee moved a plant nearby so we could see better. Hidden by long leaves was an external outlet we hadn't used since the house was built. Having completely forgotten about it. From that outlet, as the employee had said, a wire extended towards the in-laws' house.
Do you know anything about wire?
Sam and I looked at each other. Likely thinking the same thing.
Hey, Sam. This means... Yeah, no doubt. This is why our electricity bill suddenly increased.
Just to be sure, we followed the wiring with the employee. Pushing aside hedges and overgrown weeds, we found the wire indeed entered the in-laws' house shed. We couldn't see where it connected from there, but it was clear the in-laws' house was involved. The employee's expression hardened.
Should we call the police?
No, it might come to that, but let's talk first.
This house belongs to our parents.
The employee, tense at first with the suspicion of electricity theft, relaxed upon learning it was a family home.
Is that so? Then I'll leave it to you.
Thank you for coming out. We really appreciate it. We escorted the employee back to our driveway and watched him leave. After saying goodbye, we faced each other, thinking. Sam sighed deeply, holding his head.
I'm sorry for having such a mom. Don't worry about it, or I can't really say that. What do we do now?
Tony and Nicola were probably home, as usual. Should we go talk to them now, or plan a strategy first? Sam, hand over his mouth, walked towards the external outlet left exposed after the employee moved the plant. Earlier, the staff avoided the plant, so I could clearly see the external outlet. Thinking about it, Nicola placing the plant there might have been to hide it. It felt wrong to suspect her, but it seemed the only logical explanation.
What's this connected to?
Sam then reached for the outlet and quickly pulled out the wiring.
Is it okay to pull it out? I just did. Thinking about them taking electricity from our house all this time makes me angry. Well, the employee is a witness. They can't talk their way out of this. If needed, we have that.
You're right. I nodded in agreement. That's when it happened.
Ah!
A high-pitched scream came from the in-laws' house. It must have been Nicola. Next, some hysterical mumbling, then the voice moved towards the door and headed our way. Nicola burst out of the house towards the garden with force.
Wow!
She hadn't expected anyone to be there. Seeing us, Nicola exclaimed in shock.
Oh! You scared me! What are you doing there?
She came at us aggressively, so I stood my ground and replied.
What about you, Nicola? Do you need something in our garden? You seemed quite flustered.
Well, that's... Nicola awkwardly averted her eyes. Sam, holding the unplugged wire firmly in his hands, was right there. Nicola exclaimed,
Ah!
and tried to snatch the wire from Sam's hands. Sam twisted away, hiding the wire behind his back.
What are you doing? No, that's my line.
Sam held the wire in front of Nicola's face and said in a low, serious voice.
This was plugged into our outlet.
Tom emphasized our, and Nicola glanced upwards, momentarily flustered.
So what? Do you know where this wire leads? I have no idea about that. But put it back right now. It's causing trouble over here because it's unplugged.
She demanded it should be plugged back in without knowing where it leads. And she is claiming harm from it being unplugged. That was as practically an admission of guilt. Yet, Nicola seemed unapologetically frantic. The reason for Nicola's panic was clear. I stood next to Sam, smiling brightly.
Nicola, please calm down. We can't plug in a wire when we don't know where it leads. This is our outlet, you know? It's fine to plug it in. Just a bit won't hurt. So. Oh. Nicola, you've always told me not to waste electricity, even a little, and that Sam is unfortunate to have a wife who can't even save on electricity. You said that, didn't you?
Well, that's... Nicola was restless. It's too late. She murmured softly, almost panicking.
What time is it now?
It's 9:57 a.m.
It's no use now.
With that, Nicola ran off, stumbling as she went. Sam was puzzled by Nicola's bizarre behavior, but I knew the reason. I whispered to Sam. What? So that's what it was.
Maybe if we wait at home, they'll come by eventually? Sounds like it.
Sam threw the wire down, and we headed back inside. A few minutes later, there was a sound at the door, followed by the doorbell. It was Nicola. I unlocked the door and opened it.
Hello, Nicola. About earlier. Shut up! Move!
As soon as the door opened, Nicola pushed past me, clicking her tongue as she entered. She was visibly in a bad mood. Stomping through the house like a monster, she plopped down on the sofa. Sam, already in the living room, started to speak but Nicola beat him to it. "Ah, I'm so thirsty."
What about my tea?
"You're so slow."
You should move before being asked.
"That's the rule, isn't it?"
Yes.
"And you locked the door again, didn't you?"
This is why people say the son's wife in this neighborhood is so cold. As if there's anything in this house worth stealing. Pretending to be all high and mighty is just annoying. Huh?
Nicola continued to complain. I can't stand it anymore." I grabbed a half-empty plastic bottle nearby and slammed it on the table in front of Nicola. She froze, eyes wide.
Mary! Here, water for you. And you mentioned there's nothing to steal, but unfortunately, there are greedy and dirty people out there. Like someone who would steal electricity, for example.
Nicola's face showed turmoil. I sat down next to Nicola. Despite being right beside her, Nicola wouldn't even look at me. She looked down, her face turning pale.
What's wrong, Mary? You're completely different. Oh, Nicola. There's only so much I can take. Did you think I was some kind of saint?
I tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but Nicola looked as if she had encountered a demon rather than a deity. Nicola looked at Sam for help, but he just shook his head silently. Nicola had no allies. With an angry daughter-in-law beside her and Sam. As there was no one inclined to help nearby, Nicola's next move was predictable.
I'm sorry. I just remembered something. I have to go now. You're not going anywhere.
I pressed down on Nicola's shoulder as she tried to stand up from the sofa. Nicola's rear sank back into the sofa.
Mary! Really today? You were the one who said you were thirsty, weren't you, Nicola? Surely you're not saying you can't drink my water? After making such a fuss, that wouldn't make sense, would it?
Nicola, with tears in her eyes, reached for the plastic bottle but was stopped by Sam. Nicola looked relieved, but I didn't actually want to make her drink the leftover water. The real issue was yet to be addressed.
When did you start stealing our electricity? Stealing! What an awful thing to say! But the fact is, the wiring plugged into our outlet was leading to your house, wasn't it?
Nicola tried to speak several times, searching for an excuse, but couldn't find any that would work. There was no way to talk her way out of this situation. All that was left was for Nicola to admit and apologize. I thought that was going to happen, but it seemed luck smiled on Nicola for a moment. The doorbell rang, and when I checked, Tony was there.
Is Nicola here?
It seemed Tony had gone out for a bit and came back to find the door unlocked, the TV on, but Nicola missing, so he was worried.
Tony!
Nicola cried for help as if reinforcements had arrived. Tony was confused by Nicola's unusual state. Then, Sam explained everything from the beginning. After thinking for a moment, Tony slowly said,
Isn't there some mistake here?
It's hard to believe at first that his wife was secretly stealing electricity from his son and daughter-in-law's home.
So, who did the wiring? Do you expect me to believe a stranger came and connected our houses?
Tony crossed his arms and pondered again. Then he agreed.
Well, we should probably go and see it.
And stood up.
But
Nicola tried to stop him, flustered, but Tony asked Sam to show him to the outlet. The wire ran into a shed where it wasn't visible. After checking, Tony came back pale-faced. And immediately made Nicola apologize. I'm sorry. Truly, I am. Nicola silently looked down. Like a child. According to Tony, the wiring was connected via an extension cord to a battery and Nicola's computer. The battery was bought when they moved in. She was advised to charge it during cheaper, nighttime rates, and using it during the day was cost-effective. Nicola had been doing exactly that. Initially, it was just that, but then she started plugging in her computer and other appliances since there were free sockets on the extension cord. Eventually, she used our electricity day and night. Nicola justified her actions by saying it was more cost-effective. It was infuriating enough that she had been stealing electricity, but even more so that she had looked down on me while lying all along.
You've been saying how pitiful Sam is for having a wife who can't save, or criticizing me for buying sweets while being unable to save. Remember?
That's the truth, though. Her lack of remorse was almost impressive.
Saving by using someone else's electricity isn't saving. It's just a crime.
I continued.
And don't think we'll just let this go because we're family. If you sincerely apologize, that's one thing. But if you keep this attitude, we'll have to involve the police.
Nicola looked surprised, as if she thought getting caught would be the end of it.
What kind of daughter-in-law are you? To betray your own family?
Don't talk like that. We just want you to make amends because we are family. As I reached for my phone, Nicola panicked and lunged at me. Sam quickly restrained her.
There's no evidence. With everything laid out like this, you still need evidence? Let me tell you something conclusive.
I pointed towards the roof. Nicola squinted, then realized. Yes, our house is equipped with security cameras, which happened to cover the area around the outlet. Nicola murmured a small, "Ah."
Is this enough for you? And one more thing.
There's more? The reason you were in such a hurry today was because of the release of limited edition sweets, wasn't it? No way. I smiled. Yes. I had a friend get them for me, so I managed to secure them. If you hadn't been busy stealing electricity, you might have been able to get them on your computer, too. Too bad. Nicola trembled and then sat down on the spot. After discussing with Sam, we decided against reporting Nicola to the police. She had admitted to it, and we had evidence, but it was too much hassle, and being family, it might get brushed off. Instead, we decided to get a proper apology and compensation for the electricity from Tony and Nicola. It was awkward living so close, but it had to be done. Tony and Nicola, perhaps feeling awkward too, eventually moved back to their old house. Apparently, word got out about the electricity theft, and Nicola became the subject of rumors. Nicola was devastated and wanted to return to their original home. It turns out Nicola thought she was good at neighborhood relations. But in reality, people were just being polite. After paying us, Tony and Nicola were left with little money. But we would not help them. They needed to save on their own, especially on their beloved sweets. As for me, now that Nicola is gone, I'm enjoying my life, deciding which sweets to buy next with the electricity bill back to normal. I'm Isabella. I really dislike my parents. What bothers me the most is their obsession with what others think. They use their affectionate behavior towards me to win over people's approval. It seems like that's all that matters to them. So, at home, they were very strict with me. I was constantly nagged about etiquette and how to speak properly, down to the smallest detail. Naturally, I rebelled against that, but they never listened to what I had to say. All that mattered to them was appearing as good people in the eyes of others. They wanted me to play the role of a quiet, well-behaved child. As a young girl, I just convinced myself that it was how things were supposed to be. How long would I have to endure this? Would I have to live with this dissatisfaction forever? I want to get out of this house as soon as possible. Even as a child, I was consumed by this thought. But unexpectedly, a turning point came much sooner. It was when I was in elementary school. my sister Chloe was born. And she was much more pretty than me. It was only a matter of time before our parents' interest shifted from me to her. Eventually, all their love and attention fully turned to her. Thankfully, it allowed me to distance myself from my parents. I can finally be free, I thought, but it turned out they weren't done with me. I realized it during my senior year of high school. It was when I told my parents I wanted to get a job. Of course, I had always thought about leaving home since I was little. Graduating high school was my chance to leave. I had been looking forward to that opportunity for so long. But then, my father said something completely unexpected.
No way! You're going to college?
I was shocked by his forceful tone. Lately, my parents had been so focused on Chloe. I thought they would easily agree. Maybe he had some expectations for my future. Why do I have to go to college? With a glimmer of hope, I asked him. His response shattered my expectations completely.
You need a decent education to marry well, you know.
So that was it. I finally understood why my parents were so concerned about appearances. They were planning to use my marriage prospects to make their own lives easier.
I want to work,
I protested.
Then, are you going to pay for your moving expenses yourself?
He retorted. His words left me speechless. Given their concern for appearances, my parents had always given me an allowance. But I didn't have enough to afford a move. Moreover, my high school prohibited part-time jobs. There was virtually no way for me to earn the moving expenses myself. He knew it, which is why he said it. As I struggled to respond, he laughed.
We've spent quite a lot on raising you. Maybe you should pay us back for that?
That's...
If you don't like it, go to college,
he concluded. In the end, I couldn't argue back. But if I looked at it differently, they were offering to send me to college for free. As much as they might want to, they couldn't just force marriage or arranged matches on me against my will. So, I decided to obediently go to college and then escape after graduation. After that, I enrolled in a local college. But since my education was just for the sake of appearances, I wasn't allowed to live alone. My father never really considered my academic pursuits at college.
I'll pay your tuition, but in return, you'll have to work part-time and contribute to the household expenses,
he said shortly after I started college. How much should I contribute? I asked.
Let's say $500 a month.
I wanted to focus on my studies, now that I was in college. But he would never listen to such a request. Reluctantly, I juggled part-time work with my college lectures. The amount I had to contribute as living expenses was no small sum. With reports and test studies, I could only work a few hours each day. It was a barely manageable amount. But I don't want to waste this opportunity. So, I sacrificed sleep, splitting my time between studying and part-time work. Eventually, I graduated from college and even secured a job at a real estate company. Now I can finally leave home. That's what I thought, but my plan was naive. When I told my father about my job, he said,
"It's fine for you to work, but you can't live alone." "Why not?"
I asked, puzzled.
"What if you end up with some bad guy if you live alone?"
Huh?
"Anyway, stay at home until you get married."
That's ridiculous. Or can you pay back your college tuition right now?
If so, I might consider letting you live alone.
That's impossible. I've been contributing part-time earnings to the household.
Then, give up on living alone,
he said with a loud laugh. It seemed he had planned everything. Anticipating that, he had made me contribute to the household expenses. In the end, it was a life dictated by him. Was there no way for me to fight back? With these worries, I started working. But then, a new problem arose. He quit his job shortly after I started working. The reason was back pain. Of course, that was just a facade. He just didn't want to work anymore, and was clearly relying on my income. Still, I couldn't abandon my family. I had even researched ways to cut ties with them, wanting to become a stranger. But there's no way to completely sever ties with family. Parents will always be parents. There's no escaping that. Yet, I hadn't given up on escaping from home. Believing that one day I could live on my own, I diligently saved money. But my father would surely notice my plans. Several years had passed since I started working. One day, when I got home from work, there was a cake on the table. "What's this about?" I asked Chloe, and she replied with a smile.
"I got accepted into college."
"Really? Congratulations."
"Thank you."
Chloe clapped her hands in joy. I felt happy for her too, but then my father's next words instantly dampened my mood. "Okay, so you'll be paying her tuition."
"What? I have to pay it?"
"Of course. I can't work because of my injury." What a thing to say. He looks perfectly healthy to anyone, but arguing with him would be pointless. It's true that he has no income. If I don't pay for Chloe's education, she won't be able to go to college. He knows that and is unabashed about it. That means my plans to live alone are pushed even further away. In his eyes, he gets Chloe's education and keeps me from moving out. Chloe is a good girl. Her presence allowed me, as a young girl, to keep my distance from our parents. I may not be close to Chloe, but I owe her that much. So, I decided to pay for her tuition. Looks like living alone just got further away. That night, I ended up drinking alone late into the night, grumbling about my father. Later, Chloe safely started college. I worked even harder to pay for her tuition. However, such a lifestyle naturally took its toll, and I started to feel worn out. One day, distracted by fatigue, I left my wallet at the entrance and left the house. Arriving at the bus station, I reached for my IC card to board the bus and realized I didn't have my wallet. Shoot. I left my wallet. I quickly remembered leaving it at the entrance. I called my mother, who was at home, and she said, "Chloe took your wallet to you. She had to go to college for something." "She did?" "She said she'd drop it off on her way." I immediately started running back home. Then, a few minutes from the bus stop, near a grocery store, I ran into Chloe. She was carrying a shopping bag from the store. "Chloe, do you have my wallet?" "Here it is." She handed me my wallet. I immediately checked the contents.
"You're so suspicious."
She teased. "I have the company's card in there. If I lose it, it's trouble for the company." The corporate card and the IC card were both inside. The money was untouched, and I felt relieved. "Thanks, Chloe." I thanked her and hurried back to the bus stop. Thanks to her, I managed to avoid being late. I need to be more careful from now on. That night, I bought a thank you cake for Chloe. She was delighted, and I was grateful. But at that time, I was making a big mistake. Some days later, Aria from accounting came to me at work. "Can I talk to you for a sec, Isabella?" She was a very reliable colleague. She often gave me clothes and cosmetics she didn't need, as I was living frugally. In many ways, I owed her a lot, both professionally and personally. So, I thought she wanted to talk about something personal, but it turned out to be a bit different, and Aria took me to a private place. "What's going on, Aria?" "Listen. I wanted to ask you, have you ever used the company card for personal reasons?" The company card she referred to was the corporate card. Designed for managing expenses in one place, the company had issued these cards to employees. Of course, as a salesperson, I also had a company-issued card. However, the charges were to be billed to the corporate account. So, using the card for personal reasons would be immediately noticeable. I think I've only used it during work hours," I replied, feeling anxious. I didn't recall doing anything wrong, but I couldn't completely rule out the possibility of it being used without my knowledge. As I was pondering, she said, "Actually, your card was used at a grocery store. It looks like it was for buying water. Do you remember?" Grocery store, water. I thought hard about it. Then, I remembered the day I forgot my wallet. For a brief moment that day, Chloe had my wallet. I normally never let anyone else handle my wallet, especially at work. Therefore, if someone else used the card, it had to have been Chloe on that day. "Well, do you know the date it was used?" I didn't want to suspect Chloe. I asked Aria, hoping to prove it wasn't her. If the card was used on a different day, then she wouldn't be the culprit. I must have been absent-minded and accidentally used the company card. That's what I wanted to believe, but reality was harsh. The card had been used on the very day I forgot my wallet. "Is there anything you can recall?" Aria asked. On impulse, I blurted out,
Oh. I might have mistaken it for my IC card.
Really?
I sometimes buy water before work.
I see.
I'm really sorry about that.
I paid the amount that had been charged right there. I made excuses in a panic, but Arya comforted me, saying, "Don't worry, I've made the same mistake before." I was worried it might happen again. Driven by anxiety, I asked Arya for a favor right then and there. "Are you sure? It'll be extra work for you, Isabella." "Yes. I don't want to repeat the same mistake." "Okay, I'll take care of it." "Thank you so much." Thus, I managed to avoid turning it into a big issue. But I knew there wouldn't be a second chance. If something similar happened again, it would surely be a major problem. That's why I took the initiative. That incident was a significant turning point for me. I had always thought Chloe was a good girl, but she was a child doted on by our father. She never rebelled against him. If she's aware of everything, maybe she's just pretending to be good, not just outside the house, but in front of me as well. At that moment, I found her smile strangely frightening. My parents were trying to use me for their own benefit, so I was already cautious of them, especially my father. But now, I had to be wary of Chloe too. What should I do? The thought of living with my parents and Chloe became scary. I had always wanted to leave, but now more than ever. After much thought, I confided in my boyfriend, Timothy. "Why don't we get married then?" he said casually. I was at a loss for words. He smiled. "If we're married, you can leave your house. I'm a civil servant, so they probably won't object." That's true. He and I were classmates in college. We'd been dating for over 5 years, and I had been thinking it might be time. But I had my family to consider. I couldn't easily say yes to marriage. However, I had told him about my family's problems. He had listened and advised me on various things. Despite all that, he was still willing to marry me. "Please, I'd appreciate it." So, I decided to get married. But it wasn't just happiness filling me up. There were too many problems, especially with my father. It wasn't certain that he would agree to the marriage. I'll have to persuade him carefully. I decided to take my time convincing him. But as I hesitated to bring up the topic of marriage at home, time just passed by. Half a year went by like that. I need to say something soon, I thought to myself. Then, unexpectedly, my father and I got into an argument.
Enough. I've told you many times to marry the person I introduced. That's impossible. I'm seeing someone. What? Who is the guy? He's a civil servant. A good person.
He fell silent at my words and seemed to be thinking. I took the chance to say,
"He's willing to give a generous dowry. That should satisfy you, right?"
He looked hesitant. That could work. I decided to push through.
"How much should the dowry be?" $30,000.
I thought that was a lot. But when I mentioned it to Timothy, he agreed to provide it. Thus, with his help, I was able to leave my home. Once the decision was made, everything else went smoothly. I started preparing to move right away. Then, on a certain Sunday, I arranged for the movers to come. During the move, Chloe approached me.
"Just keep your promise to pay for my tuition, okay?"
That's fine, but can I ask you something? You've used my card without permission, haven't you?
Oh, you found out, huh?
She said, without any sign of remorse. I had tried several times to confront her about the truth, but never got the chance. I gathered my courage to ask, but it seemed like no big deal to her. Using someone else's card is a crime. Do you understand that?
It's fine, we're family, aren't we?
She replied, showing no guilt. I was infuriated. I'll deposit the tuition money into the designated account. But that's it. Consider it severance. Huh? Once I leave this house, we're strangers. Do whatever you want. She walked off with a scoff. Later that evening, when the moving was done, I went to the living room where my father was waiting. Where's the money? It's always about money with you. Here it is.
I've always dreamed of profiting from marrying you off to someone well off since you were born.
Well, this should be enough. I've contributed plenty to this house already.
Yeah, now it's all up to Chloe's future spouse.
He smirked, his comment dripping with sarcasm. He might keep coming back to ask for more money. That thought makes me angry. But when that time comes, I'll just have to turn him away. Then we had our last meal as a family. Chloe wasn't there, though. According to my mother, she was out with friends. Better not to see her. After the meal, I gathered my belongings and decided to leave the house. But as I was leaving, I ran into Chloe.
Oh? Still here, Isabella? Ah, right, here, I'm returning this.
Without a word, she handed something over. I looked down and saw it was the company card. I quickly checked my wallet.
Only realizing now? I took it when I was in your room. You're so clueless.
I clenched my teeth. Clearly, she had used it without permission. That's when it hit me. Chloe brazenly admitted.
I used your card for drinks and meals for about 100 people, so check it up.
Then, without being asked, she started telling me all about it. She talked about a reunion she had and going to an all-you-can-eat, one thing after another. She even mentioned choosing an expensive restaurant, thinking about the card's limit. That really made me angry. So, I retorted, "Who are you, exactly?"
What? You were serious about us being strangers once you left home? But what about the tuition fee?
She kept bothering me about it.
The bank card for the tuition fees has been given to Dad,
I said, and quickly walked away. Afterwards, I joined Timothy and started our new married life. Nothing much changed, though. I continued working, and the only real change was our home. But that was the biggest change for me. I was filled with a sense of freedom I had never felt before. I hoped this happiness would last a long time while enjoying life with him. About half a year went by. One day at work, Chloe showed up.
You're here. Come out.
She caused a scene at the company reception. Hearing it, I rushed to the reception. Chloe.
There you are. What do you think you're doing, you liar?
She yelled the moment she saw me. She started shouting at me, showing me her bank card.
I got a call saying the tuition couldn't be withdrawn, and I was embarrassed, you know.
What are you talking about? I made sure to deposit it.
Huh? But it clearly hasn't been withdrawn.
Don't you even know how to check your bank card? Are you really a university student?
Of course I am. 4th year at a national university. I've even secured a job.
She yelled. Sighing, I explained. I deposited this year's $5,000 tuition fee. Here's the deposit record, see?
That's exactly it. That amount was withdrawn from the card. You must have done it.
It was you who withdrew it, right?
I don't even have a card. So it was you.
But I heard you paid for foods for 100 people with it, didn't I?
Foods? What foods?
Don't you remember paying for an all-you-can-eat for 100 people with the card? As I questioned her, her face turned pale. In a panic, she started making excuses.
I used your company card, but it's a corporate card, so.
Clearly, she didn't understand. So, I explained to her carefully. A corporate card withdraws from the corporate account. That's correct knowledge.
So, the card I used was.
But once, someone used my card without permission. So, I had the withdrawals changed to my personal account.
Personal account?
What I had was indeed a corporate card. That was when I realized. The withdrawals were being made from my personal account, not the corporate account. That setup, while involving more paperwork for expense claims, allowed for private use of the card. Essentially, it eliminated the need to carry multiple cards. Plus, if someone else used it, the company wouldn't suffer any damage. Meaning, when she paid for the drinks, it was already set to withdraw from my personal account. So, the amount for the drinks is gone. It's your responsibility since you used it.
What about the university tuition?
I paid what was asked of me. You'll have to figure out the rest. With that, she began to make even more noise. Eventually, the police arrived and restrained her.
No! That's not me.
What do you mean? You admitted to using my card.
That was.
I clearly told you. Using someone's card without permission is a crime.
But.
Think about what you've done. In the end, she was taken to the police station for questioning. However, I didn't file a complaint. I didn't see the need, especially since someone had uploaded her outburst at my company on social media. Unsurprisingly, it quickly drew a wave of criticism. She ended up being expelled from her university. After that, my parents, who concerned about appearances, moved to the countryside with her. It seemed they thought they could escape the scandal by leaving town. Their plan was to find a marriage partner for Chloe there and then extort money from him. But given their bad characters, it was unlikely to work. I heard they quickly got into trouble with Chloe's new partner.
Isabella! We're being sued for damages! Help us!
My father contacted me about a month after I moved. Causing trouble within just a month, they would likely repeat the same mistakes.
I'm sorry, but if you come to our house, I'll file a complaint about the previous incident.
Be prepared for that. After I said that, he stopped contacting me. But with no money and no job, I couldn't help but worry. So, I had a private investigator secretly check on them, and they turned out to be working together at a logistics warehouse. Apparently, it was the company of the person Chloe had clashed with. They must have been told to work off the debt if they couldn't pay it. Hearing they were working long hours in a gloomy warehouse, I felt a bit relieved. They should be able to pay off the damages and earn their living expenses. I decided to let them fend for themselves and keep working. Meanwhile, Timothy and I continued our happy married life. My job was going well, and my sales performance was steadily improving. With no family around, money was accumulating. All that good fortune made me a little apprehensive about the future. But for now, I want to fully enjoy this happiness I've finally attained with Timothy.
Looks like your company is going under.
The words were spat out with a look of sheer schadenfreude. Our company has always been looked down upon by her. Being in charge of dealing with her, I've been on the receiving end of this kind of abuse for a while.
What are you talking about? This is a huge loss, and it's troubling. Even if it's tough, you're just a secondary contractor after all. Why not look for a new job if your company's sales go down?
After placing a $300,000 order and canceling it at the last minute, and then saying something like this, she is really out of line. Her attitude and the way she treats our company are something I can't deal with on my own. But then, a chance encounter showed me a way to avoid the $300,000 loss.
Are you kidding, huh? It's your company that's going to go under, I suppose. What?
Thus, Carol Smith was about to face some serious trouble. I'm Emily White. I'm turning 48 this year. I was married once when I was younger. But I got divorced 5 years ago, and now I'm single. I had a child in elementary school, but when my husband and I split, he took our child, and I moved out. I used to be a housewife when I was married. My husband was domineering, and I spent my days walking on eggshells around him. After the divorce, I hated the thought of marriage and couldn't imagine remarrying. I decided to live on my own. But as a single woman with a past as a housewife, I had no reliable source of income. That's when I stumbled upon a job ad for a web development company and managed to get a position as a secondary contractor. It was tough at first since I had no knowledge in the field. I was over 40 at the time and worked hard not to be outdone by age. Thankfully, I managed to keep up with the younger employees. Then, I was recognized by the sales manager and transferred to the sales department. Dealing with clients was challenging, but I found that I was good at sales and enjoyed it. However, we were trading with Dynamic Creations Inc. as our client, but its president's daughter named Carol Smith was incompetent, rude, and looked down on secondary contractors. I was troubled by her attitude many times.
I've been feeling a bit off lately.
Being at the age for menopause, my OB/GYN advised me not to stress too much. But the stress seemed to only increase no matter how much I tried to alleviate it. As soon as I arrived at work, there was a call from Carol.
White speaking, how can I help you?
It's Smith.
The web modifications you did are causing problems again.
Can you fix it quickly?
Get an engineer on it.
It seemed that a part of the web page we worked on for their company was malfunctioning, and they wanted it fixed quickly. But that issue was already fixed last month, and after rechecking, there were no problems. Didn't you tamper with it somehow? Of course not. It's your company's incompetence that's causing this. Fix it fast. Reluctantly, I explained the situation to our engineers and asked them to handle it. However, they reported that the malfunction was not due to anything they did, but rather someone else's interference. Ms. Smith, I have a report. According to our engineers, the malfunction is occurring in a part that our company didn't handle. Maybe someone else tampered with it? What are you talking about? I won't accept such an excuse. The malfunction caused a lot of inconvenience to our customers. I didn't want to admit any fault on our company's part without evidence, but decided to apologize to resolve the situation. I'm sorry. Oh well. It's not a big deal this time. We'll be billing you for the consignment fee. What? What are you saying? Do it for free. She hung up unilaterally. It wasn't our company's fault. Carol, this president's daughter, pretends to know about the web but complains like this, making our engineers reluctant to work with her company. According to the engineers, it seemed likely that an inexperienced engineer had made some sort of error that caused the malfunction. Even though our company's engineers didn't cause the issue, we were called in and ended up not getting paid for it. I kept getting complaints from the engineers, and she blamed me unilaterally, so I was about to burst with stress. That evening, I decided to go to a bar I had wanted to try for a while, hoping to unwind with a drink. I planned to enjoy a quiet drink alone. I ordered my favorite food, sipped my preferred drink, and was pleasantly tipsy when I noticed two women enjoying their drinks at the table behind me. One of them was Carol. Maybe she was with a colleague. The woman with her was elegantly dressed. You know, the employees at that secondary contractor are so incompetent, it's frustrating. The woman with her just nodded and smiled, lightly agreeing. Secondary contractor. Were they talking about our company? There might be other secondary contractors they work with, but I was curious and listened in. By then, my buzz had worn off. So, this weird auntie is my contact at the secondary contractor. You'd think salespeople would be more stylish, right? But this auntie looks so ordinary. The other woman just chuckled without comment. Carol kept talking. That auntie, she's divorced and used to be a housewife. It's so uncool. A woman who doesn't care about her appearance. I wonder what she's thinking. It's kind of amusing to me, a good stress reliever. It was definitely about me, divorced and a former housewife. I don't pay much attention to my looks. More like, I can't afford to spend much on it. So I always wear the same kinds of clothes and hardly put on makeup. I couldn't stand being there anymore and left the bar. Unnoticed by Carol. The bar, meant to be my stress reliever, ended up being another unpleasant experience. Back home, exhaustion washed over me. I looked at my face in the mirror. Tired, with dark circles under my eyes. I should put on some makeup. I opened my makeup box. Just powder and one old lipstick. I couldn't even remember when I bought them. I opened my closet. It was filled with plain clothes. I sighed. When I was married, I couldn't buy anything with my husband's money, and after the divorce, I had no assets and was desperate for money. I never had a fulfilling life as a woman, balancing work and personal life. But Carol, who doesn't know me, shouldn't be saying such things about me. Tears fell as I looked in the mirror, lost in thought. The next day at work, Carol called again, and I was stressed out from the start. What can I do for you? I need to talk to you. Can you come to our office right away? Yes, I understand. I canceled my other plans and headed to her company. I've arrived. Oh, sit down. I have some good news. Good news. Frankly, good news from she made me feel uneasy. We're starting a new project, and I want your company to handle it. What kind of project? It's completely unrelated to web development. We're thinking of distributing free catalogs to boost sales. Can you handle the production? Our company isn't a printing company, but we have the technology to do more than just web development and advertising. We might be able to use that. I'll check with our company first. By the way, how much are we talking about for the contract? Well, considering everything including subsidiaries and affiliates, it should be around $300,000. A $300,000 order is a significant deal for a secondary contractor like us. It's pressure, but it could also be a big opportunity. I immediately consulted with our president. He tends to leave decisions to the staff, and he quickly gave the go-ahead. It's that kind of company, but I thought I could figure out the production process from scratch. Ms. Smith, regarding our recent discussion, our company will take care of it. Thanks. Let's get the contract sorted then. I think we need about 140 copies. And then, things moved forward. I started preparing for the catalog production, reaching out within the company and to acquaintances. It cost money, but completing the project would bring in $300,000. I managed to make a sample first and showed it to Carol. This looks good. Proceed with it. She approved it surprisingly quickly. The production seemed to be going well. But on the day we started printing, she called and said, "Actually, I've decided to cancel the printing. Consider the contract null and void." What? This means your company is going under. She said this to me with a triumphant tone. What are you talking about? This is a huge loss, and it's troubling. It's troubling, but you're just a secondary contractor. Why not find a new job if your company's sales drop? I reached my breaking point with stress and anger. I won't forgive this. I muttered to myself, canceling a $300,000 order on the day of, it's more than just a loss. Our company is small, and being a secondary contractor, we're always at risk of going under. But the printing was already underway. The catalogs would be finished in a week. I couldn't sleep that night. How will I explain this to the president tomorrow? The next day, feeling demotivated, I couldn't bring myself to go to the office, so I spent my time at a cafe and walking around to escape reality. That's when I bumped into one of my mom friends from my housewife days. Olivia. Emily? Is that you? It was a reunion after a long time. Olivia had given me advice on amicable divorce and was someone I relied on a lot for child-related issues. Despite being the same age, she was like a big sister to me. She used to work as a legal advisor for a corporation, but now works freelance, focusing on educational outreach for fraud victims. Emily, we haven't seen each other since your divorce. How are you? I'm fine, thanks. I'm working hard now. You're doing well. We ended up chatting for so long that we decided to continue our conversation over drinks at a nearby bar. I couldn't help but vent about my work frustrations to Olivia, whom I hadn't seen in a while. Then she said, "Is the company you work for a secondary contractor for Dynamic Creations Incorporated? How did you know?" I was their counsel for a while, so I'm familiar with the inside story. I remembered that she had been a legal advisor for various companies and knew a lot about different industries. So, what's the real deal? Being a secondary contractor, we can't really oppose them. But their demands are often unreasonable. What's the industry's reputation like? It's bad, just between us. Really? Yes. It's not so much the company, but the president's daughter who has a particularly bad reputation. I thought so. I had always thought Carol was just a mean person who looked down on us because we were a secondary contractor. In my venting session, I decided to tell Olivia about the sudden cancellation of the $300,000 order. So, you're dealing with Mr. Smith's daughter, right? Do you interact with her a lot? It's not just interaction, it's been really tough lately. I told her everything about receiving the $300,000 catalog order, researching techniques, getting cooperation from within the company, and just when I thought we were about to complete a significant project, it got canceled on the day of. I couldn't stop talking. Remembering it all, I felt so frustrated that tears came to my eyes. Emily, that must have been hard. Are you okay? Wipe your tears.
I have to report this to the president tomorrow. I might get fired, and our company's revenue will suffer.
Well, she thought for a while. Leave this matter to me.
What?
Just tell me what you want. I'll think about it. There might be something I can do. Who would have thought someone would offer to help like this? I was grateful she was even willing to listen, let alone take it on as her own issue. Tell me what you want.
First, I want the contract to be executed properly since it's a big deal for our company. If that's not possible, I want compensation of $300,000.
I conveyed my desperate hopes to her. Understood. Anything else?
I want Carol to suffer. It's a personal grudge, though.
I hesitated to share such resentment with Olivia, but I did it anyway. Okay, got it. Could you report the facts to your president and ask him to contact me? Contact Olivia from the president? What does that mean? Does she have some connection with our company, like being a legal advisor or something?
Should I have the president contact you?
Yes. Your company's president knows my husband. You didn't know, did you? She smiled confidently, as if to say, leave it to me.
I really appreciate this connection. I'll do as you say. Let me consider how to thank you later on.
After that conversation, I immediately went back to the office and explained everything to the president. As expected, he was furious. Not with me, but with Dynamic Creations Incorporated. After I mentioned Olivia, he seemed to understand the situation and said he would contact her, then I went back to work. The printing of the catalog had started. There were 140 copies. What to do with this inventory? Then I got a call from Olivia. I've talked with your president. Leave the rest to me. I'd like to come and see the catalog you're currently making. I have the president's permission.
Okay. I'll be waiting.
About 10 minutes later, Olivia came to the company. She looked at the catalog. Dynamic Creations Incorporated's achievements are all lies. But I'll buy these.
What?
If I buy them, your company won't suffer a loss. Then, pretending to be an employee from here, I'll visit Dynamic Creations Incorporated under the guise of being your new contact. We'll talk more later. I decided to leave everything to her. I've got an idea. First, we'll pretend you're quitting, and I'll be your replacement to greet Carol.
Me quitting?
Yes, she looks down on secondary contractors, including you. If you quit, she will target me next. That made sense, but what was her plan? My interest was piqued.
That could be true.
From there, it's my turn to shine. Just wait and see. Okay. I'll act like I'm quitting. Thus, I went with Olivia to greet Carol. Nice to meet you. I'm Olivia Wilson. What's going on? Ms. White, what does this mean?
I'm resigning, effective immediately.
Really? So, Ms. Wilson is your replacement? Then Olivia greeted her. Yes, I look forward to working with you. After a brief silence, Carol repeated, You're leaving, huh? Well, it makes sense after losing the $300,000 deal.
Yes, I'm leaving. Because of you.
Olivia interrupted our conversation and took over. Both of you, please calm down. Ms. Smith, about the catalog, you wanted to cancel it on the day of printing?
Yes, I forgot I had already ordered from another secondary contractor. It's just a small company, so stopping the printing on the same day should be feasible, right?
Unfortunately, the cancellation was not possible, so the printing is complete. We will send the invoice for payment. Carol paused, seemingly unprepared. That's impossible.
Another secondary contractor is already printing it.
That sounds like you just forgot you had ordered from another company and panicked, canceling our company's order. I cornered Carol with the realization of her mistake.
That's irrelevant. I can't pay your company $300,000.
In that case, the printed material becomes our property. and we'll take responsibility for sending it to your company's affiliates. If you're not charging us, that's fine. My boss won't find out about my mistake. Here's the list of companies. We'll arrange the shipment right away. Thank you. I bid farewell to Carol as I left. Thank you for everything, Ms. Smith. Hey, White. Blaming me for your resignation is unfair. It's not my fault. You're going bankrupt anyway. Are you joking, huh? Your company is the one going bankrupt. What? Olivia echoed my sentiment. Your company is the one facing bankruptcy. We left Carol's company. On our way out, Olivia was arranging to send the catalogs to the companies Carol was dealing with, using Carol's company name and hers as the sender. In fact, the catalogs were blank inside. We managed to stop the content from being printed on the day of printing. A few days later, what kind of spiteful thing did you do by quitting? Carol called me furiously. What's wrong? The companies are angry because the catalogs we sent are blank. I'm getting non-stop complaint calls. Imagining her overwhelmed with complaints, I almost laughed but held back. I'm sorry. That's not enough. Thanks to you, deals I was about to close are getting canceled. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. That's unfortunate. I hung up the phone unilaterally. I felt strangely uplifted. The next day, Carol made an unexpected visit to our office. White, I have a request before you leave. What is it? I doubt there's much I can do. I'll pay the $300,000. But I need you to tell the companies that the blank catalogs were a mistake. If we lose these deals, I don't know what will happen to my company. Seeing her weakened, I pressed further. The catalogs being blank was a terrible mistake. I'm sorry, I had no idea. It's not about that. Please contact the companies and apologize, saying it was your company's mistake. Please, do something. I won't do it. I've been persistently mistreated by you, and I almost suffered a $300,000 loss because of you. She started crying. I'll pay the $300,000. That has already been paid. What? This is a company issue, so I explained the situation to your father, the president, and he has already made the payment. Carol realized that her father, the last person she wanted to know, was now aware of the issue, and her attitude changed. I'm sorry, it was all my fault. If this gets out, I won't be able to stay at the company because of my many mistakes. I feel terrible for causing such a loss to the company and to Dad. Please forgive me. You know, if your father finds out about this, he'll be embarrassed in front of the entire company. She was on her knees, crying. I don't want to embarrass my dad. What should I do? Tell me, Ms. White. While inwardly thinking it's not my problem, I watched her crying. Shall I tell your father about all the harassment you've inflicted on our company? I'm sorry. Please, no more. I'll apologize as many times as needed. She continued to cry. Ms. Smith, you've always looked down on us because you're the president's daughter, right? Be honest. She shook her head desperately, denying it. You think we, the secondary contractors, would believe that? I didn't mean it that way. But if it seemed like that, I'm sorry. I watched her pitiful figure for a while, but as she didn't stop crying, I left her and went back to my work. By evening, she was gone. She's gone. My retribution is over. I muttered to myself and headed home. Carol, due to the catalog incident, faced a barrage of complaints from companies and was apparently fired by her father, the president. Her company suffered significant losses and a drop in revenue, as expected. Thanks to my friend Olivia, I was saved in many ways. Having actually resigned from the secondary contractor, I'm now helping with Olivia's educational outreach, and through her referral, have managed to step up to a sales position at a larger company. I'm truly grateful to her and treasure our connection as I continue to work hard.
Wouldn't it have been embarrassing to have a painting like that on the front porch? My daughter-in-law, Macy, who had sold my prized painting on a flea market app without my permission, stated flatly. My mother had done a colored pencil drawing of Gerberas for me from her hospital bed before she died. That drawing was a memento of my late mother. I know, but I can't hang an amateur drawing because it's too shabby. Do you think you should talk to me like that, even though you are my daughter-in-law? I said boldly, but Macy was unfazed. She drew her arms across her chest and stared at me. Please consider your position. We will be taking care of you in the future, right? It's that deciding line again. So you're allowed to sell my belongings without my permission? I'm your one and only son's wife. Think about how much we are going to take care of you. Macy gave me one more look before walking out the door, her luxury brand shoes clacking. I'd be moving into a new house alone the next day. Macy knew this and sold the painting to harass me. Henry, my son, and Macy, my daughter-in-law, had sold my belongings without my permission before. I was furious but resigned to the fact that I would never get them back. But I'll never forgive her for selling my mother's mementos. Both Macy and Henry, who was always at her disposal, irritate me. I'll completely cut ties from my son and wife when I move into my new house tomorrow. My husband, son, and wife can live in this old house. I am Amy, a 50-year-old housewife. For years, I did all of the housework while working part-time at a factory. I look after my family, which includes my husband, my only son, and as of 3 years ago, my daughter-in-law, Macy. My mother, who raised me as a single mother, died 6 months ago. She left me a large sum of money from her life insurance policy. I took advantage of the opportunity to purchase a small, new house and decided to divorce my husband, with whom I had a strained relationship. The day before I moved in, Macy sold my mother's painting without my permission. When I told my husband we were splitting up, he simply said, "Do whatever you want." During our many years as a couple, our relationship had cooled. I believe neither of us did anything wrong and that what happened was unavoidable. My son and his wife, who lived with us, were the ones who were against my leaving. Who will do the housework if you leave? Aren't you a housewife? I am a civil servant like Henry, so I am not like you who only works part-time. It's appalling to hear a mother throw her family out of the house. My son and his wife both continued to complain as I was packing. First and foremost, why are you buying a house now? It's the money my mother left me, and it's up to me what I do with it. When the insurance money arrives, you should put it to good use for your family. A house where you'll live alone is a squandering of money. She's right. You should have shared grandmother's insurance money with us. Henry's wife was a brand-obsessed woman who never washes a single pair of underwear and is constantly taking dance, yoga, English conversation, and other classes. My son, who is at her beck and call, blames me all at the same time. This was enough for me. My friend Jane, who lives near my new house, invited me over the night I moved in to join her for dinner. My husband is out drinking today too, so I thought it would be perfect. Thank you very much. I still haven't unpacked anything. Jane's house is magnificent. She and her husband both love dogs, so they built a house to accommodate a large dog. In fact, 3 Dobermans are currently resting quietly in the living room's corner. I told Jane about Henry and Macy while eating a hamburger she had prepared for me. What's the deal with your daughter-in-law? And I'm sorry, but your son is also pitiful. Henry used to be a stronger person, but now he's at the mercy of his wife. I'm tired of it. One of the large dogs approached me and nuzzled my feet, as if to console me. It was Hannah, the female of the 3 Dobermans. Hannah is much gentler than my son. All of our dogs are smart, and good. Jane used to be a trainer because she's so good with dogs. Her 3 new dogs are large and scary in appearance, but are really gentle and extremely intelligent. They would never attack anyone, but they will bark at uninvited guests if Jane instructs them to. I wish I had a dog as gentle as Hannah is. Why don't you get yourself one? I'll train it for you. Indeed, I am free to do whatever I want as of today. In a new house, you begin a new life. Isn't that right? I thought so too. Macy and I are moving to my parents' house next month. At the end of the month, my son called me with this news. I'd just gotten used to living alone and was starting to enjoy my independence. Your parents' house? Oh, you're moving to Macy's parents' house? No, it's my mother's house. My home? You already live at your father's house. I wasn't sure what he was saying. I talked with Macy. After all, my parents' house is my mother's house, not my father's, and we decided to move to your house. No, my house isn't big enough for the 3 of us. I was not going to put up with Henry and Macy bossing me around and making me do all of the housework. But one of the rooms does have a place to sleep. You can sleep in the living room corner, and we can use that space as our bedroom. Don't be ridiculous. What are you talking about? You want me to sleep in the living room corner? I could feel my face getting hot with rage. We're coming even if you don't like it. I'll start by shipping you a couple of boxes. I'm not going to accept them. Well, then, I'll think of something. Anyway, I'm coming, so please, look after me, Henry said, and abruptly hung up the phone. I don't want this. I despise the idea of Henry and Macy bossing me around and forcing me to do all the housework. That is something I will not allow to happen. The next day, Jane and I went to a family restaurant. I wanted her to listen to my story. I'm sorry, but you have the worst son and daughter-in-law. As she sipped her latte, Jane continued, You must not accept it under any circumstances. You must politely say no. Well, since it is those 2, they might hire a moving company. I don't know what to do. To wash down my pitiful feelings, I drank a sip of jasmine tea. I enjoy this tea, but it is quite bitter. Well, it is difficult to say no when the movers will come. If we're not careful, we might get into trouble. We have to do something to make them not want to come to my house. I can't stand the way they're acting. Well, we could ask my children for help. What, Hannah and the dogs? Hannah, Sun, and Sky are Jane's 3 kids, her 3 beloved Dobermans. My dogs will bark, growl, and act out to some extent on command. I could ask them to scare them away or something. In fact, my son has been afraid of dogs since he was a child. It's difficult to live with a son and his wife who would sell their mother's mementos without permission. So let's come up with something. I agree. Thank you very much, Jane. I felt a little relieved as a result of our conversation. When I returned home, I discovered that my son and his wife were serious. 2 large cardboard boxes had been stacked in front of the front door. These are Henry's and my possessions. We thought you would refuse the courier, so I brought them. We will move in next month, so please keep them in the house. Macy. My shoulders slumped as I read the note attached to the cardboard box. I had no choice but to bring the box inside, and when I opened it, I discovered many of their personal belongings. Henry's imported watches and leather jackets. Macy's designer bags, clothes, and shoes. They must have left behind valuable items I would not discard without permission. What a dirty move. How little they must think of me to sell off my mother's paintings or leave this luggage without my permission. Well, we could ask my children for help. Jane's voice from the family restaurant came to mind. I've occasionally accompanied Jane on dog walks since I settled in after the move. She invites me to accompany her for a change of scenery. She's a great friend to have. It means a lot to me. Why don't you sell their belongings? Macy would sell them on her own, wouldn't she? Yes, even the memento my mother painted. Moon, a male dog, looks at me from the end of the leash I am holding. By the way, why do your son and wife want to live with you? They're both government employees and have money, so why don't they just live together? They don't like doing housework, especially Macy because she's always learning, going out to play, or watching fashion and makeup videos. So you've been doing all the housework by yourself? Yes, my husband never did it, and Henry works overtime and travels a lot, and Macy is the same way. I recall hearing a conversation between my son and his wife on the day I announced my departure from our home. If you leave the house, who will do the housework? Well, you can. No, obviously not. I want your mother to do it. Jane sighed in disgust when I mentioned this. It wasn't until a week later that I received several phone calls from Macy. I finally answered in disgust after she phoned dozens of times. Your house is quite small, right? Yes, that's what I said. Henry said he saw you with 3 big dogs, and I wonder if 3 dogs like that could live in a small house. It struck me. Macy is obviously terrified of dogs. There are people all over the world who are terrified of dogs. One of them is Henry. Jane must have been with me when Henry saw her, but he must have been completely distracted by the dogs. I told you it's a small house. If you're worried, why don't you come back and take a look? I will. I want to check the inside of the house. Macy's voice unraveled a little. She decided that there was no dog in the house. Anyway, I'll be there this Sunday at 10 a.m., Macy said and hung up the phone. Okay. Unexpectedly, I can take my revenge now. On Sunday, Henry and Macy came to my house as planned. You really came? I said I would come. You know, it's because you bought the house on a whim that we're in this messy situation. That's really true. You should have stayed quiet and continued to do the housework like before. Complaining, they took off their shoes and entered the house. Okay, that's it. I opened the living room door, gloating in my mind. Whoa! Ah! The next moment, my son and his wife screamed in unison. There were 2 Dobermans, Moon and Sky, sitting there. What? Are you kidding me? Mother, this dog. These are my dogs. Aren't they cute? Jane, the dog trainer over there, found them for me. Jane, who was sitting on the sofa, stood up and smiled at me. They are so cute because they are well trained. Moon, Sky, how do you say hello to our guests? The dogs barked at the same time. Macy said, "Oh no!" Macy sat down with her head in her hands. Is she that bad with dogs? Oh, they are so cute. Don't worry, Moon, Sky, play with them. At the sound of Jane's voice, the 2 dogs ran over to Henry and Macy, respectively. They raised their paws, wagging their tails as if to say, "Let's play." Stop! Oh no, I'm scared! Macy shook her head and began to wriggle and shake. Moon just invited her to play with him, but Macy doesn't understand. I'm scared of dogs. Macy just lost it and burst into tears, snot running out of her nose. Oh dear, if you're going to live in my house, you'll have to get along with these kids too. Make them stop! This ruined the makeup she had studied on YouTube and was so proud of. Her mascara was running and the lame from her eyeshadow spread to her cheeks. Her tears and runny nose made the high-end foundation look soggy. With this face, she was going to take the train home. Hey, Mom, do something about it. Meanwhile, Henry, who had been jostled by the much larger Sky, fell on his backside and began to scoot away. Sky, thinking that he was playing, happily jumped on Henry. No, stop it. The dog is too big and scary. I suddenly looked at Henry's jeans and saw that the color of his crotch had darkened a bit. He was so afraid of the dog that he had peed himself. How pathetic. Moon, Sky, come here. Jane decided it was time to stop and called the dogs. Immediately, the two dogs left Henry and Macy and returned to her. Moon, Sky, down. With that one word, the dogs lay down at Jane's feet. They really are smart kids. Until now, even though I've been slaving away at my part-time job and housework, you've never helped me. Besides, when I said I was going to leave, you decided to live on your own. Do you think your mother is stupid? I spat out the words I had been holding back as my son and his wife stood up, crying. I left home because I was fed up with you. I am not your housekeeper. But doesn't that mean you have to? He's a well-trained and smart dog, and much gentler than you. Henry and Macy lacked their usual air of bravado. A husband with a wet crotch and a wife whose makeup is a mess. They make the perfect couple. You also sold off my precious things without my permission. I will never forgive you for selling my mother's painting. I said it at once and looked at Moon and Sky, who were meekly lying face down, before looking at my son and his wife again. This, a house with 2 dogs this big, is something we don't want. That's right, we'll give up moving. So give me back the stuff we left behind the other day, then we'll go home. They're still in the boxes in the next room. Take it and get out of here. As I pointed to the next room, Henry and Macy took a wide turn to avoid the dog before opening the door. And... whoa! Ah! They both screamed again and fell on their butts. That's right, because another Doberman, Hannah, was sitting right next to the boxes in the room. Mom, the boxes. Please get them. I don't want to. You brought it yourself, so take it yourself. I peeked into the room and saw Hannah just sitting there with a calm expression on her face. I can't go near a dog like that. Then give up your stuff. You mean I should leave it? My bags and Henry's watches are in that box. You also got rid of my precious things without my permission, didn't you? I didn't ask you to leave them behind. I'm telling you, take it with you. Macy just glared at me for a moment. But then, perhaps remembering the dog's presence, she lowered her eyes with a sigh. Please, Mother, bring us the boxes. You and Macy have been making fun of me. You knew how important that painting that she sold off was to me, but you didn't stop her. Well, I'm sorry about that, but... At that time, Jane came to me. Hannah, how do we greet our guests? Immediately, Hannah sat down and barked loudly. No! Stop it! Hearing Hannah's voice, the son and his wife must have reached their limit. With his wet jeans and her face covered in smudged makeup, they ran to the front door and got out of the house. After that, I sold all the personal belongings Henry and Macy had left behind to a pawn shop. I discovered that their belongings were of considerable luxury, with Henry's watch having a surprisingly high value and Macy's bag being of a particularly high class. The extravagance of these items left me in a state of dismay. Back at her house, Macy ended up being responsible for all the household chores. My former husband does not like Macy's housework. He constantly complains that the food is bad, the house is dirty, and the laundry is piled up. Macy can no longer go to her lessons because of her housework, and she has gained 10 kilograms due to the stress. And all of her frustration seems to be directed at Henry. Mom, I'm at my limit. Macy finally started hitting me. She's been fighting with Dad all the time. I want a divorce. One day, Henry called me, his voice exhausted. You chose your own wife, didn't you? You can take care of yourself. Of course, I would not give advice to Henry. I was sick and tired of being involved with that couple. Meanwhile, I bought a female Shiba Inu and asked Jane to train her. She's going to be a great dog. Jane smiled as she patted the head of the puppy I named Rio. Really, it's all thanks to you. I'm sorry for making the dogs play such an unpleasant role. That's okay. When I heard what you said, I was more upset than you were. But from now on, you and Rio can live together peacefully. Yes, from now on, I will enjoy my life and my time. With this determination in my heart, I gently picked up the puppy.